Chapter 1069. Seeing Yi Yuyu's reaction, Shen Luo looked at her coldly and said, "Do you want to know how I know it?" "I didn't." Yi Yuyu shouted, "Who doesn't want to be with their mother? I wanted to be with my mother and so did my sister, but I was only 5 years old at that time. How could I know so many twists and turns?" Shen Luo, and don't judge others by your own standards. I'm not as disgusting as you. Shen Luo sneered, "You've been disgusting for so many years. Don't you think it's too hypocritical to say this now? You know how to make yourself more beautiful and likable since you were a child. Grandma was right. A woman like you is full of bad intentions since you were a child. You are destined to have no fate with our Shen family. No wonder my grandma hates you so much." Hearing this, Yi Yuyu's heart beat faster and her heart was cold. She looked at Shen Luo in front of her and said, "Do you want a divorce?" "Divorce?" Shen Luo laughed, "I'm crazy. If I divorce at this time, I'm really finished." While speaking, he stopped. Shen Luo was not as tall as Li Jinan. He was about 1.8 meters tall, which was almost the same height as Yi Yuyu, who was wearing high heels. They looked at each other and Shen Luo continued, "Or do you want me to lose my reputation? To get back at me?" Yi Yuyu was shocked. Looking at him, she didn't know what to say for a moment. Is this what Shen Luo thinks of me? How is it possible, Shen Luo? I'll get back at anyone but you. Don't say it, Shen Luo interrupted her and said, "In this case you'd better not intervene in the next thing. If I find out, I don't know what I'll do." After that, Shen Luo directly bypassed her, opened the door and went straight out. The door was slammed shut. Yi Yuyu was frozen in place and couldn't recover for a long time. In her heart, the things that she had been obsessed with seemed to collapse at this moment. Heavily, she made a clear and desperate sound. He didn't believe her, even if only a little. Is this still the old Shen Luo? The boy who used to look at her with a gentle smile, the boy who once ran in the mountains with a high fever on his back, and the boy who was almost eaten by wolves in order to save her from the mountains. Where was he? There was nothing left. With the passage of time, the youth in the past had gradually disappeared without a trace. Was this man in Shen Luo still worthy of her persistent love? That was the first time Yi Yuyu had thought about it. He was at a loss and at a loss. Her cell phone rang anxiously. Yi Yuyu took it out of her bag and answered it. It was Mila. Mira was not only her good friend but also the best agent under NC Company. She picked up the phone and heard Myra's anxious voice. She shouted, "Yuyu, the fact that you're married has been exposed. Now everyone knows that you're Shen Luo, Anne's wife. You'd better not go out for the next few days if there's nothing important. I'm afraid you'll be surrounded by the paparazzi." "How could that be? Very few people know about this." "I don't know. Anyway, be careful. I'll ask an assistant to help you." "Got it? Thank you, Mila." Chapter 1070. "Mira," Yi Yuyu interrupted Myra's words and said, "If I use this to hype up, will it have any impact?" Mira was stunned. She thought it would take a lot of effort to persuade her to use this to hype up. She didn't expect Yi Yuyu to ask first. After thinking for a while, Mira said, "If you decide to use this to hype up, leave it to me. If it were any other artist, I would definitely start to hype up without hesitation. But you are my friend and I don't want you to blame me in the future. Yuyu, if you really want to use this to hype up, I am confident that I can make you famous. As for whether you can make it to the A-list or not, it depends on how hard you work." Like many girls, Yi Yuyu had dreamed of being a big star since she was a child. Hearing Myra's words, it was impossible for Yi Yuyu to say that she wasn't tempted. Everyone wanted to be successful and reach the peak of life. People who had this kind of goal were always men and women, young and old. Yi Yuyu was silent for a moment and asked, "What is the risk?" "Now that the crisis has been created, even if the outside world knows the fact that you have a secret marriage with the young master of the Shen family, it is not impossible to cover up this matter. But if you want to make use of this matter, you have to make it big. So, will it bring harm to the Shen family?" "The harm to the Shen family is not caused by you, but by themselves. What you do is just to help them. But if it succeeds, will your husband blame you?" "Blame?" Yi Yuyu twitched her lips and said, "Then let's start, Mira. I'm ready." Mira felt a little strange and reminded her, "If there is a crack in your marriage because of this, will it be okay?" "Even if I don't hype up, there will still be cracks in our marriage." Yi Yuyu smiled and looked into the mirror from afar. Suddenly she felt a little sad. "I'll leave it to you, Mira. Tell me what to do." "All right, I'll contact you again if I need your cooperation." "Okay." After hanging up the phone, Yi Yuyu sat on the sofa and browsed the news. The major websites had been replaced with news of a famous male star taking drugs, but there were also netizens who questioned and posted, "Is this to save the Shin siblings? Hands up, this PR is awesome." After scrolling a bit more, she realized that there were already a lot of news about her on the trending page. Breaking news, Shin Luo, Anne's wife's identity has been revealed. She's from the entertainment industry. She's the new and powerful actress Yi Yu. Yi Yu clicked on it. Was the newly minted actress referring to her? Although it wasn't positive news, he still felt a little happy when he saw these words. He clicked on it and found that the comments were mixed. Pingxing Yi De Li, what do you mean by a new and powerful actress? Come on, any random unknown actress is a new and powerful actress. How can you call me Goddess Jean? My Goddess Jean Fan Jean Fan double-clicking 666 send you to the heavens? I have an impression of this woman. She's already married? He had a child's face. Damn. And Shin Shuang is so shameless. I'll send you to heaven. I pity this star. It wasn't easy for her to find a rich second-generation heir. So this is how he behaves, doghead, super cute little piggy. My sister, you're amazing. You're being treated as a mistress by your own sister-in-law. This woman must be lacking in charm. After scrolling through the list, her phone vibrated. She had received a WeChat message. Chapter 1071. When Yi Yu saw the message, she immediately asked, "What should I send?" Mira, it can highlight your position as the underdog and make you seem helpless, but it can't be weak. Can't make people think that you're pretending to be weak. Think about it carefully. When she saw the message, Yi Yu thought for a moment. Then she typed 3 words to Mira. I believe him. When Mira saw the words, she was slightly stunned. She immediately sent a thumbs up. Sure. When Yi Yu saw Mira's reply, she sat on the sofa and took a selfie. Then she sent out the message she had prepared. After she sent it, no one responded for a few minutes. After all, she was a minor celebrity. It was normal for no one to notice her. Yi Yu didn't care too much. She put her phone down and went to take a shower. After removing her makeup and applying a facial mask, she picked up her phone and realized that the message had exploded. Sister Fan is the best. F***ck he still believes in such conclusive evidence. True love. Yunxia Yiji Ruhua. Girl, although I don't know you, I sympathize with you. It's better to get a divorce with such a man. Heart? Bao Jia's little lowly? I've seen the military adventure you acted in. Although you're not very popular yet, I can tell that you're a very hard-working newcomer. Keep it up. Heart? Shuang Xin Kuangya. You still believe in him? Are you retarded? Because of this message, Yi Yu's number of fans increased from the original tens of thousands. There were a lot of messages popping up. It was the first time that Yi Yu had experienced such an obvious change in her fans. Do you know how celebrities become famous? It's 30% ability, 30% luck, and the rest is all hype. That was what Mira had said. Make use of the hype. When Yu Lily arrived at the Kingstown airport, it was December 29th, the day before New Year's Eve. Yu Lily had wrapped herself up tightly to avoid being photographed. Her original plan of not returning to the country had been completely ruined by Oh Ming. The first thing Yu Lily did when she returned to the country was to put her luggage at home before calling Oh Ming. Recently, Oh Ming had been extremely busy. The end of the year was approaching, and there were a lot of urgent matters to deal with in the company. There was also his mother's matter, the Shun family's matter, and the wedding. All kinds of things piled up. When he received Yu Lily's call, it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon and he had just eaten. Oh Ming? Yu Lily asked. Oh Ming took a sip of the soup and replied, yes. I'm back home. Oh Ming choked on his soup and coughed violently. He hurriedly pulled out a piece of tissue and wiped it. At this time? Yeah. Yu Lily heard his surprise and said, I'm alone at home now. Yi Chanshan went home for the new year. No one followed you, right? Oh Ming put down his chopsticks worriedly. Why didn't you tell me you were coming back? I was afraid that you wouldn't let me come back. I missed you. Yu Lily's voice was cautious. After I got off the plane, I wrapped myself up tightly. No one would recognize me. I'll be fine. Oh Ming's temper melted when he heard her say, I missed you. His expression softened as he said in a low voice, wait for me. I'll go look for you now. Chapter 1072. Su Qing was sitting next to Oh Ming eating. After watching Oh Ming hang up the phone, he coughed and asked, is that Miss Yu? Yeah, Oh Ming answered and stood up. After explaining the company's affairs, he stood up and said, if anyone looks for me, tell them that I am busy and have been in the company. In this kind of situation, Ming did not dare to provoke the reporters easily. If they were groundless, who knew what they would write? Su Qing knew the danger and nodded, but he still reminded him, "Why don't you eat first?" "I'm not eating. You eat." Ming went into the office cloakroom and put on sunglasses. After changing into a low-key black windbreaker, he went downstairs. Driving a more common car, he stealthily drove to the neighborhood where Yu Lily lived. As soon as he went up, Ming rang the doorbell, and the person inside immediately opened the door. Ming was dressed very differently from his usual style, but Yu Lily recognized him at a glance. With a happy smile on her face, she rushed toward him. Her whole body climbed on top of him and her legs clung to his thighs. Ming held her firmly, and the smile on his face gradually widened. After carrying her in, he closed the door and couldn't wait to kiss her face. Yu Lily took off his sunglasses, hugged his neck with both hands and kissed him back. Ming sat on the sofa with her in his arms, pinched her face and frowned. "Why have you lost weight again? Haven't you eaten these days?" "I'm not used to French food." Yu Lily smiled and sat on him, looking at his tired face. On his originally wheat-colored skin, there were 2 more dark circles under his eyes. It was obvious that even his chin had turned green. His hair had grown long and his cheeks were slightly sunken. Yu Lily felt a little distressed. She touched his face and asked, "Have you been very tired recently?" The heartache in her eyes made Ming smile. He held her face and kissed her on the lips. "I'm not tired," he said. "Liar. Look at your face." Yu Lily pinched his face and said, "You look like a person in his 30s. You look old again." Ming laughed. "I'm already in my 30s. No, you look about the same age as Shinjilia. That's because he grew too fast." Ming looked at her seriously. "That's why he looks old. I'm different. No matter what, I'm still young. Otherwise, how could I have charmed you for so many years?" Yuli snorted in disgust and looked away. "What kind of expression is that?" Ming hugged her and chuckled helplessly. "Am I wrong? You've grown thicker. It's only been a few days since we last met, and your facial defense has become so strong?" Yu Lily pushed him away. "I'm hungry. Have you eaten?" "I didn't eat." "That's great. Let's eat instant noodles together." "There's only instant noodles here." "Okay." Ming chuckled and looked at her. "Everything you cook is delicious." Yu Lily raised her eyebrows slightly with a proud look on her face and immediately went into the kitchen. About 10 minutes later, Yu Lily walked out with a bowl of noodles and shouted, "Time to eat." However, what responded to her was a steady and even breathing. "Asleep?" Chapter 1073. A part of Yu Lily's heart was suddenly squeezed hard, and it was sore and painful. Putting the noodles down, Yu Lily went to the room and took out a blanket. She gently covered him. Ming had always been a light sleeper. Yu Lily's movements were very, very light, for fear of waking him up. After gently covering him with the blanket, Yu Lily quietly took the instant noodles back to the kitchen. Then she put on her coat, hat and scarf and walked out the door. Ming hadn't had a good rest since he went to Japan. As soon as he returned to China, he was busy again. Even he didn't expect that he would accidentally fall asleep. When he woke up, he smelled the aroma of food. Ming lifted the blanket on his body and stretched. He could clearly hear a slight sound coming from the kitchen. The sound was very quiet and he could tell that it was light movements. Ming walked into the kitchen quietly. Yu Lily was cooking. She was wearing an apron and holding a spatula in her hand. From behind, she had short hair and wore a beige scarf. Her figure was slender and graceful. Every part of her was so perfect that it made Ming's heart beat faster. Ming gently stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her waist from behind. Yu Lily was caught off guard and was shocked. When she turned around, she saw Ming's smiling peach blossom eyes. His dark brown eyes were a little bit evil. He leaned over slightly, and his eyes were full of tenderness. He whispered, "Are you scared?" Yu Lily relaxed and glared at him. "Why don't you make a sound when you walk?" Ming hugged her tighter and moved slightly closer. He stared at her face and whispered, "What delicious food are you making?" "See for yourself." "I can't see it." Ming's eyes never moved away. He looked at her and said, "When you are here, I only have eyes for you." Yu Lily couldn't help but smile. She turned off the fire and said, "Go wash your hands. We can eat soon." Ming didn't listen. He leaned forward and easily captured her lips and gently sucked. Yu Lily slightly narrowed her eyes in response, but she withdrew after a kiss and said, "Let's eat first." Ming reluctantly released her and kissed the corner of her lips again. "Okay." He washed his hands and sat down at the dining table. He took the rice that Yu Lily handed him and quickly started eating. Yu Lily had a small stomach, so she was half full after a few bites. She rested her chin on her hands and looked at Ming. Ming couldn't help but chuckle as he ate. He looked up at her and raised his eyebrows slightly. Are you so fascinated by my handsomeness that you can't help yourself? Yeah. Yu Lily laughed out loud, but the smile on her face quickly disappeared. She asked, It's almost the new year. Aren't you done with your work? They should be on vacation at this time. There's still a project in the company and I'm almost done with it. Ming looked up and saw the distress on her face. He felt warm in his heart and said, Thanks to your help, Shen Manting was dealt with directly. Otherwise I would have been busy for a while. Yu Lily blinked in surprise. Really? Yeah. These few days, because of Shen Luo and Shen Manting's matter, the focus of the media has been shifted a lot. It's more convenient to do a lot of things. It's all thanks to you. It was just that the timing of the news wasn't right. Although the travel and reputation issue had been resolved, there was a new problem with Qiao Ziqing. Chapter 1074. Silly girl. Ming laughed and said, You did a good job. Hearing Ming's praise again, Yu Lily felt a little flattered. She folded her hands on the table, looked at Ming with a pair of round eyes and asked with a smile, Then how will you reward me? What reward do you want? The smile on Yu Lily's face widened and she said, Can you promise me anything? Ming saw the cunning smile on her face, and the smile between his eyebrows deepened. He nodded and said, As long as I can do it, I promise you. As long as he could do it, he could give her anything. Even if he couldn't do it, he would try to do it. Yu Lily heard that and smiled like a flower. Well, you keep it in mind. When I think of something, I will tell you. Not now. Not now. Let's talk about it later. Yu Lily stood up, walked to the refrigerator and asked, Do you want to drink milk? Hearing the word milk, Ming turned his head and said with a smile, Are you going to drug me again? Yu Lily felt a little guilty and turned her head away. She coughed and said, Don't mention the past again. It happened a few days ago, Ming said. Really? Why do I feel that it's been a long time? Yu Lily took out 2 bottles of milk, put one of them in front of Ming and said, Drink it. There is no drug this time. Feed me. Ming put down the chopsticks, took out a tissue and wiped his mouth. You feed me and I will forgive you for drugging me last time. If I don't feed you, you won't forgive me? Yu Lily didn't believe him. She bit the straw in her mouth and looked at him with a teasing look. Forget it. It doesn't matter to me. Ming looked at her proud look, stood up, walked toward her and said, Then I will punish you. Yu Lily held the milk bottle, drank it and stepped back. She looked at him and asked with a smile, What do you want to do? Don't run. Stand. Ming walked toward her and rushed toward her with his long arms and legs. You have to pay the price for bullying men. When Yu Lily saw the situation, she retreated with the milk bottle in her hand and shouted, I didn't. You've always been the one bullying me. You're still quibbling? Don't run. Ming ran after her. Yu Lily exclaimed when she saw that. She ran into the room and locked the door from the inside. With a sigh of relief, Yu Lily put down the milk bottle and shouted, Mr. Big O, please wait outside. Open the door, little you. You will be punished even more severely. Ming's voice was filled with laughter. He gently knocked on the door a few times. Open the door. You still want to punish me? I'm not going out. Yu Lily snorted and walked around the room. She put back the things that she had put away one by one. Yu Lily opened the door. Ming was still knocking on the door. After Yu Lily put away her digital screen, she went out and opened the door. As soon as she opened the door, she saw Ming's tired face. However, his pair of beautiful peach blossom eyes were still as bright as a bright lamp. They were bright and full of expression, like honey, which made people unable to extricate themselves from them. When Yu Lily saw him, all the dissatisfaction that had been accumulated in her heart disappeared. Chapter 1075. Yu Lily was caught off guard. She struggled for a while, but soon she obeyed. Ming held her in his arms and moved his feet gently. Soon he pushed her down on the bed that she had just made. The hot kiss gently moved from her lips, and Ming seemed a little impatient. With his arms around her waist, Ming looked at her with a pair of burning eyes and whispered, How long have we not seen each other? 4 days. Yu Lily gently put her hands on his waist and felt his eagerness and enthusiasm. She looked up at him with a smile. It's 5 days. Ming gently kissed her lips. It's 7 hours faster in China than in Paris, so it's 5 days. Can it be calculated like this? Yu Lily felt that this man was shameless. Looking at the eyes in front of her, she blinked. Ming moved a little closer and his hot breath intertwined with hers. He whispered, then let's change the calculation. There are 24 hours in a day, 8 hours of work and 8 hours of sleep. We can be together for 8 hours a day. So, how many hours have I lost? That works? Why not? Ming smiled. The distance between their lips was less than a millimeter, and they were almost touching. Yu Lily's heart was beating fast. This kind of distance was more nerve-wracking than a direct kiss. Once an hour. Tell me, how many times do you want to compensate me? Yu Lily's face was burning. She pushed him and growled, big pervert. If you love someone, you will do sexual things with her all the time. You told me this. Have you forgotten? I didn't. Don't be shameless. You said it. Ming held her hands and then lowered his head to kiss her lips. His movements were gentle, slow and tender. His big palms moved gently down her body, easily penetrated her clothes around her waist, and touched her warm and smooth skin. Yu Lily narrowed her eyes and gently hugged him. She responded intentionally or unintentionally. The winter in Kingstown was never particularly cold. Yu Lily was wearing an unlined shirt and a loose sweater, which was easily taken off by Ming. Her snow-white upper body touched the cold air and shrank. Ming pressed his lips against hers, and his kisses fell on her body, gentle and devout. Yu Lily couldn't help but lift his thigh. She climbed onto his leg and hugged his waist. She called out, Ming? Ming directly sealed her lips. His big hands were unscrupulous, and his tongue pried open her lips and teeth, intertwining with each other. Just then the phone in Ming's pocket began to vibrate. Ming paused and straightened up. His breathing was a little heavy. He picked up the phone and saw that it was his mother calling. He calmed down and waved the phone screen in front of Yu Lily. It's my mom. I'll take the call. Yeah, Yu Lily answered. She pulled the sweater that she had thrown aside and covered herself with it. Mom? Lil? Oh, it's almost Lunar New Year. Come home quickly and let's have a meal together. Mom, I'm still working. You and Dad can eat first. You're still working? Where are you working? I'm at the company. Don't wait for me. Chapter 1076. When Ming heard that, his heart skipped a beat. Subconsciously, Ming glanced at Yu Lily. Meeting her gaze, Ming remained calm and said, I just came out. I'll go back later. I still have things to do. Really? Really? Qiao Ziqing was skeptical and snorted. You'd better not let me find out that you're still with that woman. Otherwise don't come back for the new year. Just die with that woman outside. Su Cheng's heart twitched when he heard that. What she said was too much. You shouldn't casually curse people at any time, especially during the new year. In ancient times, it was considered a taboo for an elder to curse the younger generation. Su Cheng coughed and said, Madam, isn't it too much to say that? After all, Master O is your son. Qiao Ziqing listened to the phone and looked at Su Cheng. She had already guessed something. With a sullen face, she said, Do you know that he's with that woman? I don't know. Su Cheng lowered his head. But I think it's not appropriate for you to curse your own son like that. Master O has been very busy recently. I hope you can forgive him. Qiao Ziqing knew that her son was busy. Otherwise, she wouldn't have brought him the dessert she had made herself. But as soon as he arrived at the company, he wasn't there. It was a very uncomfortable feeling. Especially when she thought that her son might be with that coquettish B***Tis, she felt even more uncomfortable. Qiao Ziqing held the phone in her hand and said to Ming on the other end of the line, No matter what, go home early tonight. Special Assistant Su has a family. How can you let him work overtime with you? No matter how important your work is, put it aside and let Special Assistant Su go home for the new year. Ming heard what Qiao Ziqing said and said, Okay. If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up. Qiao Ziqing snorted and hung up the phone first, not giving Ming a chance to do so. After hanging up the phone, Qiao Ziqing looked at the young assistant beside her and said, I know you have a good relationship with my son, but I am Ming's mother. I have the right to know what he has done. Special Assistant Su, next time you find out that he has gone to look for that woman, or if you have any news about that woman, I hope you can tell me. I will not mistreat you. Hearing this, Su Cheng smiled slightly, nodded and said, Yes, madam, I will definitely tell you everything I know. Qiao Ziqing was satisfied. She looked at the dessert in her hand and said, Drink this dessert. It's good for your body. As he spoke, he placed the dessert cup on the table and turned to leave. Su Cheng looked at Qiao Ziqing's departing figure with a complicated look in his eyes. He glanced at the dessert she had just put down and sent a message to Ming. Madam seems to have noticed something and asked me to report to her any news about Miss Yu. Ming saw the message and replied, "What do you say?" Special Assistant Su, I agreed but I didn't say anything and I won't say anything in the future. Seeing Su Cheng's reply, Ming put down the phone again. He turned his head and saw Yu Lily, who was obviously a little disappointed. Yu Lily was lying in bed. When she saw him looking at her, she smiled a little resentfully, which made him feel sorry for her. Chapter 1077. It was a simple question, but it made Ming's heart suddenly sour. Yu Lily's face was full of resentment and confusion, as well as a little embarrassment. He shifted his body slightly so that he was no longer pressing down on her. After taking off his jacket, he lay down beside her and kissed her hair gently. He whispered, "No. Maybe my mother has some misunderstandings about you. She'll understand when I explain it to her." Really? Yu Lily was a little depressed. She looked up at Ming's face and smiled. "You should go back. Your mother should be waiting for you at home. I want to be with you." Ming leaned over and pressed her under his body. "I'll go back tomorrow." As he spoke, he lowered his head, and his lips were close to her face. Yu Lily slightly turned her head to avoid his kiss. Deep in her eyes, there was a clear sense of loss. She whispered, "You'd better go back. I don't want to do it now." Ming's eyes were slightly deep. He held her in his arms and said, "Then don't do it. Let's chat." Yu Lily heard that, turned over and faced him. Then she lowered her head and went into his arms. She held his waist with one hand and called, "Ming." "Yeah." Ming held her in his arms and kissed her head gently. "I'm here." Ming, I am very curious about one thing, but I have never dared to ask you. Now I want to ask. Can you answer me?" Yu Lily looked up at him. Her dark eyes seemed to be covered with a layer of wet mist. Ming looked at her and clearly noticed her uneasiness. He reached out and gently brushed the hair on her forehead. "What's the matter?" Winter nights always came faster. It was already 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and the light in the room was already dark. In the dim light, Ming's eyes looked particularly bright. A pair of sparkling eyes looked at him. They were filled with pity, love, guilt, and an inexplicable pity. Ming. Yu Lily looked at Ming. Her heart beat faster and faster. It was so fast that it was trembling. It was so fast that her heart was numb. Unconsciously, her grip on his clothes tightened as she asked, "Will you really marry me?" Ming hadn't expected her to ask such a question. He was startled, but he quickly looked at her firmly and said, "Yes." "Really?" "Of course." Ming looked at her. His big hand ran through her short hair. His peach blossom eyes were shining. "I won't marry another woman. I promise you my wife is only you. Only you." Yu Lily felt a lump in her throat and buried herself in his arms. Ming looked down at her and said in a hoarse voice, "I will take care of my mother." Since Qiao Ziqing was in poor health, it was impossible for him to go against her. He could only convince her step by step. Now, the biggest obstacle between them was Yu Lily's identity. He hugged her and asked in a low voice, Have you seen your parents?" Chapter 1078. Her tone was light as if it was not a big deal. When she spoke, there was a helpless smile on her face. "Stop it." Ming reached out and gently stroked her hair. "Tomorrow is New Year's Eve. Do you have any plans?" "I'll draw at home." Yu Lily smiled. "I have nowhere to go anyway. Except for the 3 years I was with you, I had to work on New Year's Eve every year. Now that I finally don't have to work, of course I have to wake up naturally and then work. Tomorrow is New Year's Eve. Don't work. I'll take you out to play." "When?" "Now." Ming pulled her up. "I'll take you to second brother's house." "Is there anything fun in their house?" "Yes, they have 3 children." Yu Lily was speechless. "Play with children? Dummy challenge begin." As soon as the sweet voice fell, Li Jianxian and Li Mosen stopped what they were doing. Suddenly the doorbell rang. Ding dong. Tomorrow was New Year's Eve, and Nanny Rong had already started her annual leave. Su Chenxi was reading in the study. Hearing the sound, she called, "De Su, see who's here." However, there was no response. Ding dong. Ding dong. The doorbell continued to ring. Su Chenxi closed her book and walked out. As soon as she went out, she saw 3 little guys, each in a very strange posture, maintaining a motionless posture. Li Jianhua was holding a big doll, sitting on the sofa, in the most normal posture. As for the other 2, Li Jianxian maintained a running posture, and Li Mosen's mouth was open as if he wanted to say something. His eyes were wide open, not even blinking. Seeing them like this, Su Qianxi knew they were playing some boring game again. Ignoring them, she went straight to the door and opened it. She clicked on the intercom screen and saw Yu Lili and O Ming. Su Qianxi was quite surprised but quickly opened the door and invited them in. Seeing Su Qianxi, Yu Lili felt a little warm. As soon as she entered, she gave Su Qianxi a big hug. Su Qianxi was dazed and looked at O Ming. With a faint smile on his lips, O Ming asked, "Is second brother here?" "He hasn't come back yet. Come in." Su Qianxi opened the door and gently patted Yu Lili on the back. "What's wrong?" "I'm fine." Yu Lili smiled brightly. "Where's your child?" "Desu Ersu Mosen, stop playing. We have guests." Hearing Su Qianxi's words, Li Jianxian immediately breathed a sigh of relief, and Li Mosen directly relaxed and sat on the ground. "I'm so tired." Li Mosen gasped, but he quickly stood up and said, "Hello, uncle." "Hello, auntie." Li Mosen was of mixed blood, with blue eyes and fair skin. He looked out of place with the other two children. However, Li Mosen was also extremely good-looking. He looked like a doll. Yu Lili was excited. She stepped forward, touched Li Mosen's little head and said, "Hello." Li Jianxian called out, "Uncle O, you're here. What would you like to drink?" Li Jianyue also got up from the sofa and greeted, "Hello, Auntie Lily." "Hello, Uncle O Ming." Her voice was as sweet as cotton candy, very pleasant to listen to. Chapter 1079. "Sit down, I'll cut fruit for you," Su Qianxi said. Then she looked at Li Jianxian and said, "Desu, go and get juice for uncle and auntie." "Okay." Li Jianxian responded, but Li Jianyue immediately shouted, "Mom, I'll go." Su Qianxi saw that she was so active, smiled and said, "Okay, then you go." Li Jianyue happily put down the doll in her hand, and then walked to the kitchen with her short legs. The little nightdress on her body flew as she walked. She moved a small stool and climbed to the kitchen where the cups were placed. She took 2 cups and then went to get a tray. After putting down the cups, he carried the small stool to the door of the fridge, tiptoed to open the fridge door, and used all his strength to pull out a bottle of juice. After that, his pair of short hands carried the juice to the side of the table where the cups were placed. After stuffing the juice on the table, she returned the way she came and took the small stool back. After pouring 2 glasses of juice, Li Jianyue took the tray and walked to the sofa in the living room. Along the way, a pair of big black grape-like eyes stared at the 2 glasses of juice on the tray, for fear of spilling it. Finally, after walking for a long time, seeing that the juice was safe and sound, she breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "Uncle and Auntie, drink the juice." Yu Lili's heart was about to melt. She picked up the 2 glasses of juice, put one in front of O Ming, and held the other in her hand. "Thank you, Ersu." "Auntie, you're welcome." Li Jianyue smiled happily, holding the tray and dancing. She cheered and walked toward the kitchen, shouting, Mom, I'm done." Auntie also thanked Ersu. As her short legs moved, the pink princess nightgown on her body also moved along with them. Her bell-like laughter made people's hearts feel comfortable. Yu Lili looked at Li Jianyue running, and the love and envy in her eyes became stronger. She took a sip of juice and her eyes were deep. Li Jianxian and Li Mosen came out with a Rubik's Cube, ran to O Ming and shouted, "Uncle O, you see I can turn it now and Mosen can do it too." "That's amazing," O Ming praised, took the Rubik's Cube and said, "Then Uncle will test you." Hearing this, Li Jianxian was a little excited. He nodded and said, "I also asked my father to buy me a very complicated toy. Mosen knows how to play but I don't. I'll go get it." With that he ran inside. O Ming chuckled. Looking at the little guy who was excited to show off, he felt that the little guy was very similar to Li Xiqing when he was young. However, as Li Xiqing grew up, he became more introverted and composed. Li Mosen sat obediently at the side, took the Rubik's Cube from O Ming's hand, and quickly turned it in his hand. Yu Lili watched as Li Mosen turned the Rubik's Cube. She couldn't help but exclaim, "I don't even know how to play with this thing. Kids nowadays are too smart." Not all children are so quick-witted. O Ming looked up with a smile on his lips. Second brother's children are all very smart. As he spoke, he looked up at Yu Lili and said, "In the future, our children will be as smart as them." In the future, our children? Yu Lili was still very confused about the future. Chapter 1080. Everything was still unknown. However, she wanted to be with him. She wanted to be with him, to live together and to have children together. Seeing the softness deep in O Ming's eyes, Yu Lili smiled and nodded. "So be it. Cherish the present. Take one step at a time. Out of the corner of her eye she caught a glimpse of a pink figure. Turning her head, she saw Li Jinyue's chubby little hands holding a fruit platter. She was being very careful as if she was afraid of dropping it. Feeling Yu Lily's gaze on her, she smiled brightly and called out, "Auntie, have some fruit." Yu Lily felt her heart soften. She went forward to take the fruit plate and said, "Come here, Auntie will feed you." "Thank you, Auntie, but I want to eat by myself. Dad said that if I can eat by myself in the future and don't drop it on my clothes, he will promise me one thing." Li Jinyue was a little proud as she spoke. She lowered her head and picked up an apple with a fruit fork. She held it out and said, "Auntie, have some fruit." "Thank you, Ursu." Yu Lily took it with a smile in her eyes. Li Jinyue was indescribably happy to be thanked by O Ming. She smiled and reached out her short hand to grab a fruit fork. She inserted a dragon fruit into it and ran towards O Ming shouting, "Uncle, eat some fruit." O Ming took it, gently rubbed her little head and said, "Thank you." Li Jinyue smiled happily and shouted, "You're welcome." Then she inserted 2 more and handed them to Li Mosen and Li Jianqian. Just after the 2 little guys took it, the sound of the door opening came from outside. When Li Xiqing came in and saw O Ming and Yu Lily, he was surprised. "Dad!" Li Jinyue shouted happily. She ran toward Li Xiqing with her short legs and shouted, "Dad, hug." It was colder outside than inside. Li Xiqing's body was cold. Seeing that the little girl was only wearing a thin nightdress, he moved aside and said, "Dad is cold. I will hug you later." Then he closed the door and took his daughter's hand. "Have you said hello to Uncle and Auntie?" "Yes. I poured juice for Uncle and Auntie and invited them to eat fruit. I also ate it. It didn't fall on me." As she spoke, she shook off Li Xiqing's hand, spun around and yelled, "Isn't it great?" Li Xiqing had been busy all day. Seeing his daughter like this, he chuckled and said, "Great, my daughter is the best. Where's Mommy?" "Mom is boiling sweet water for Uncle and Auntie." Li Jianyue hugged Li Xiqing's leg and said, "Dad, you promised me that as long as I don't drop food on my body, you will promise me one thing." Li Xiqing's smile widened and a smile appeared in his cold eyes. Because of this smile, his originally cold and distinct facial features softened a lot. Bending down, he picked up his daughter and walked inside. He asked, "What do you want me to promise you?" Su Qinxi asked. "I want to sleep with Daddy and Mommy. Other children sleep with Daddy and Mommy. I want to sleep too." "Who said that? Do you see the 2 brothers sleeping with Mom and Dad?" Little Red Flower next door said that she always sleeps with her parents. Li Jianyue rolled her round eyes and said, "Daddy is an adult. You can't go back on your words." That. Chapter 1081. Looking at the serious look on the little girl's face, Li Xiqing suddenly felt a headache. Li Jianyue saw that her father did not speak, so she tilted her head and said, "Dad, are you really going to go back on your word?" Li Xiqing raised his eyebrows, held the little girl and said, "How could I? But Dad said that as long as I can do it, I will definitely agree, right?" Li Jianyue heard this and nodded. "But this thing, Dad can't do it." When Li Xiqing said this, his expression did not change and he said seriously, "This is something that can't be done, so Dad is not going back on his word." Li Jianyue heard this and her little eyebrows frowned and she asked unhappily, "Why?" O Ming and Yu Lily sat on the sofa and saw Li Xiqing's serious look of coaxing a child, and they couldn't help but laugh. Li Jianqian and Li Mosen, the 2 little guys, looked over and they all had doubts, waiting for Li Xiqing's next words. They saw that Li Xiqing put Li Jianyue aside and said seriously, "Because if there is one more person in the bed, your mother will not be able to sleep." Hearing this, Li Jianyue's face was full of doubt. However, when she saw the serious look on her father's face, she was immediately intimidated and asked, "Really?" "Really?" Li Xiqing nodded and there was no hint of lying on his face. O Ming couldn't help but laugh and he turned his head and looked at Yu Lily. Yu Lily's pair of eyes looked at the little girl who was scared, and her smile became wider, as if it was full of the glory of maternal love. So beautiful. Yu Lily's smile was more charming than that of the father and daughter. "Dad, I don't believe it." Li Jianyue's voice was indescribably serious and she said, "In the past when Dad didn't come home, Ursu often slept with Mom, but Mom could fall asleep. One more is fine but not 2. That will make Mom uncomfortable," Li Xiqing said with a straight face. "Humph, then Dad can sleep with brother and I can sleep with Mom." "That won't do either. If Daddy doesn't sleep with Mommy, he won't be able to sleep." Li Jianyue was furious. She placed her hands on her hips and shouted, "Daddy, you are too childish. You are already so old, yet you still want to sleep with Mommy. You are already in your 30s. Can't you be more mature? When he said that, both Ming and Yu Lili burst out laughing. When Su Qianxi walked out with the sweet soup, she happened to hear what the little girl said. She smiled and shouted, "Ursu, how can you talk to daddy like that?" Li Jianyue snorted and crossed her arms over her chest. She turned around and shouted, "Mommy, Ursu wants to sleep with mommy tonight." Ursu has to be obedient. Li Xiqing did not wait for Su Qianxi to speak. He picked up his daughter and said, "For the sake of mom and dad's health, you can't sleep with mom and dad. Change the condition." "No, I want to sleep with mommy." "Daddy, you go sleep with big brother." Li Jianyue was very stubborn. She had no intention of being persuaded at all. She shouted, "I want to nurture daddy's independent thinking and ability just like how daddy nurtures my brothers. You have to grow up by yourself. Do you understand, daddy?" Chapter 1082. When Li Xiqing heard that, he slowly turned his head and looked at Ming. However, his eyes were cold. When he glanced at him, the smile on Ming's face immediately disappeared. He coughed and said, "This is a good way of education. It's very amiable." Li Xiqing retracted his gaze and said in a low voice, "Well said." Then he looked at his daughter and said, "Little one, Dad has grown up. He is different from you. You are different. Dad is an adult but you are still like a child. You are not mature at all." Li Jianyue pouted and said, "You can't be like this." Li Xiqing laughed and pinched her little nose. He said, "Go eat dessert with the brothers. Dad will talk to the uncles." "Can't I eat here?" Li Jianyue looked at Li Xiqing with a pair of round eyes. "Yes, you can eat here." Yu Lili quickly waved her hand and said, "Qian, let me help you." "Okay." Su Qianxi nodded. After putting down the sweet soup, she took the bowl and began to serve the children. Li Xiqing looked at Ming and asked, "Looking for me?" "No, I just wanted to bring Yu Lili to see the children." Ming looked at the little girl sitting next to Li Xiqing. "Your daughter is really not like you at all." She looked like Su Qianxi, and her character was very different from Li Xiqing's. She was also very talkative. It was good to raise a daughter. Ming began to piece together Yu Lili's face and his own in his mind. If her character was like Yu Lili, then it was over. He couldn't take care of two grandmothers. It was better to raise a son. Second brother's son was also raised well. He was not naughty and smart. As he thought about it, he looked at Yu Lili. With a smile on her face, Yu Lili happened to look over at Ming. Ming chuckled and said, "Tomorrow is the new year. Do you have any plans?" "What other plans can I have? I will take the children back to the old house and celebrate the new year with the family." Li Xiqing took a small bowl from Su Qianxi. After testing the temperature, he handed it to his daughter and said, "Be careful. It's hot. Eat slowly." "Okay." Li Jianyue held the small bowl and looked at the soup inside. She was about to drool. Li Jianqian and Li Mosen also wanted to eat and looked at Li Jianyue's small bowl. However, this was the way things were in this family. If there was good food and fun things to do, mom and little sister would have them first. The two of them would come second and dad would be last. Seeing that Li Jianyue started to dig and eat, two pairs of eyes looked at her and then at Su Qianxi. "Have you two boys finished your homework?" Li Xiqing looked at them and asked casually. Li Jianqian and Li Mosen answered in unison, "Done." With that, they ran towards the room together. The two little guys ran up the stairs together. Su Qianxi was shocked and shouted, "Be careful, don't fall." "I won't." Li Jianqian replied and quickly went up with Li Mosen. Ming looked at the two little guys and gave Li Xiqing a thumbs up. Yu Lili said, "It's too obvious that you value women over men. It's nice to be your daughter." Chapter 1083. Hearing that, Li Xiqing didn't seem to find it inappropriate at all. He said, "Daughters are meant to be spoiled. Only when they are spoiled can they harm other people's sons. It's not that easy to marry our daughter." As he spoke, he didn't forget to squint at Ming and said matter-of-factly, "As for boys, of course, they must be able to shoulder the responsibility. Otherwise, how can they protect their sister in the future? Right?" "That's right." Ming deeply agreed. Li Xiqing's words really touched the bottom of his heart. There should be a limit. Look at your daughter. Mom said she is a bit spoiled. Su Qianxi gently pushed Li Xiqing, a bit dissatisfied. Li Xiqing chuckled. "All right. You should teach her what she needs to be taught." Hearing that, Su Qianxi didn't want to talk to him anymore. She turned to look at Yu Lili and asked, "What are you going to do tomorrow?" Yu Lili's current identity was a bit awkward. If Ming went home, wouldn't Yu Lili be destined to be alone? Thinking of this, Su Chenxi suddenly realized the real reason why Ming brought Yu Lily here today. Understanding everything, Su Chenxi walked in the direction of Yu Lily and sat down next to her. She said, I happen to have 2 tickets for the art exhibition. Why don't we go together? Li Xiqing heard that and turned to look at Su Chenxi, slightly raising his eyebrows. Yesterday he said that he wanted the 2 of them to go together, to get rid of the children and go to a world of just the 2 of them. How did it become a world of just the 2 of them now? Su Chenxi didn't seem to notice Li Xiqing's gaze. She looked at Yu Lily expectantly and asked, How is it? Yu Lily clearly noticed Li Xiqing's strange look. Thinking about it, she said, Don't you need to stay at home with your family? Tomorrow is New Year's Eve. It doesn't matter. After tomorrow I will be free at night. We will go at night. The art exhibition starts at 7 p.m. When we go we can just watch the fun. Yu Lily wanted to go but she had nothing to do anyway. Every year on New Year's Eve, Ming would stay at home. He would only come over to be with her in the afternoon on the first day of the year. This year would be no exception. She subconsciously glanced at Li Xiqing. Li Xiqing also noticed her gaze and said, Go ahead. I'll take the kids to see the fireworks tomorrow. After you're done with the art exhibition, come back and play with us. Does that mean I'm inviting Yu Lily to celebrate the new year with me? Yu Lily was pleasantly surprised and her heart warmed. She nodded her head and said happily, Okay. That's settled then. See you tomorrow night. She nodded and looked at Ming. Ming didn't say anything. He just looked at Yu Lily with a smile on his face. The 2 little guys, Li Jianxian and Li Mosen, finally came down from upstairs, each holding a box in their hands. After they went downstairs they walked in the direction of Yu Lily and Ming. Uncle Auntie, this is for you, Li Jianxian and Li Mosen said at the same time and stuffed the boxes into their arms. Yu Lily and Ming were a little surprised and looked at the 2 little guys. Chapter 1084. It's all in here. After Li Jianxian stuffed the box into Ming's arms, his little face was full of seriousness and he said, Uncle, this is a gift from the 3 of us and our blessings. Please open it and have a look. The 3 of you made it? Ming felt a little strange. You went up for so long just to do this? No, we are sharing the blessings, giving half of them to you and the other half to you, Li Mosen said with a serious face. This is also the homework that Dad gave us. Ming chuckled, took it and said, What kind of homework is this? I thought it was some kind of exercise but I didn't expect it to be so different. Did you arrange it for them? It was their mother's idea. I arranged it. Li Xiqing was very satisfied with his reaction, and he looked a little proud. The main thing is to test the children's perseverance and patience. Congratulations on being the first guest of our family. You are lucky. When Ming heard that, he felt that Li Xiqing was full of the sour smell of happiness. At the same time he did not forget to look in the direction of Yu Lily. Yu Lily had already taken the lead and opened the lid. When she saw the box full of colorful flowers, her eyes were filled with amazement. She exclaimed, Did you guys make this? Li Mosen was young but he was very sensitive. Seeing Yu Lily's obviously amazing appearance, he felt excited from the bottom of his heart. Li Mosen nodded and said, I made Xin, Ursa made the stars and Daisa made the paper cranes inside. This is the homework that Dad gave us a few days ago. Each of us has to make 199 folded papers. As he spoke, he looked at Yu Lily's eyes, and his speech became slower and slower. His face became redder and redder, and he lowered his head slightly, looking quite helpless. Yu Lily saw that Li Mosen was nervous, smiled, hugged his little head, kissed him gently on the forehead and said, That's great. And he likes it very much. If my son can be as good as you in the future, that would be great. When Li Mosen heard that, he almost jumped with joy. He looked up at Yu Lily, nodded and said with a red face, Thank you, Auntie. In the future your children will definitely be better than us. The smile on Yu Lily's face widened, and she couldn't believe that such modest words came from the mouth of a 5-year-old child. Such a child could be seen from his family's education. No wonder he was the child of Li Xiqing and Su Chenxi. He taught him better than anyone else. The little boy Li Jianxian, who was standing not far from Ming, heard Li Mosen's words and said, We made 199 each. We gave Uncle and Auntie 99 each. There's still one more here. Li Jianxian took out a few pieces of paper from his pocket, pink hearts, white cranes and yellow stars. Li Jianhua took a mouthful of sweet soup and asked in confusion, Li Jianhua Li. Chapter 1085. Ursa held a small bowl and nodded. Her eyes lit up and she said, "So that's how it is. Brother is so amazing." "Of course I am your brother." Li Jianxian was not modest at all. He raised his face and said naturally. Li Jianxian and Li Jianyue had 2 children who were only 4 years old this year. Yu Lily looked at the 2 of them. Her eyes were filled with envy and emotion. These children were so smart. It was not like the flexibility and intelligence of their age. It was hard to imagine that such a smart child was a child who had lost 4 years of fatherly love. "Brother Mosen is also very good." Li Jianyue held the small bowl and said, "Mom, I want more." "You can't eat any more. You can't eat so much at night." Li Xiqing took her small bowl down and put it on the table. Then he took a tissue and wiped the corner of her mouth. He looked at the residue on her nightgown and said, "Look at your clothes." "What is this?" When Li Jianyue heard that, she blinked her eyes and looked down at her clothes. She exclaimed, "What's going on?" "You have to ask yourself. What did you do?" Li Xiqing said as he wiped her. "You have no right to make conditions now." "No." Li Jianyue was anxious and shouted, "Dad, you must be cheating. Dad framed me, right?" Li Xiqing raised his hand and pinched her little face. He said, "Little bad girl, who did you learn from? You actually want to frame your father?" Li Jianyue pouted and said unhappily, "I don't care. Dad is bad. I just want to sleep with Mom." "No." Li Xiqing said faintly, "You have grown up and have to sleep by yourself. You see that your brothers are very strong. Why do you like to cheat so much?" "I don't." Li Jianyue was even more aggrieved. She sat on the sofa and pouted. She looked at Su Qianxi and said, "Mom, it's useless to call Mom. I have the final say on this matter." Li Xiqing covered her eyes mercilessly and said, "Mosen, take your sister back to sleep." Li Mosen quietly breathed a sigh of relief and walked over happily. He said, "Let's go, Ursu. I will take you back to sleep." "I don't want to. I don't want to." Li Jianyue looked like she was about to cry. "I just want to sleep with Mommy. Daddy, sleep with brother." "Why do you want to sleep with Mummy?" Su Qianxi walked over, held her daughter in her arms and said, "Ursu, you have to listen to Daddy so that Daddy will love you more in the future." "No, I don't want to sleep with my brothers anymore. Granny Rong said that girls can't sleep with boys." Li Jianyue pouted. "Men and women can't be separated clearly. If it was in ancient times, I would be put into a pig's cage and drowned with a big rock." Ming couldn't help laughing and said, "That's called drowning in a pig cage." "Yes, drowning him in a pig cage." Li Jianyue held Su Qianxi's hand and said pitifully, "I don't want to drown. Mom, I want to sleep with you." Seeing this, not only Ming but Yu Lily and Su Qianxi also laughed together. Li Xiqing felt a little helpless. He reached out and grabbed her saying, "They are your brothers. You are still young and can't sleep alone. Your brothers will take care of you." Chapter 1086. Li Jianyue almost cried as she spoke. She waved her hands and shouted at Su Qianxi, "Mom, look, Dad is bullying me." Li Xiqing held his daughter's collar and smiled helplessly. He said, "Little one, you still know to ask for help. Be quiet." Li Jianyue immediately shut up and became quiet. She turned her head and looked at Su Qianxi pitifully. She said, "Mom, you don't help me." Su Qianxi laughed out loud. She reached out her hands and held the little one in her arms. She said, "Okay, sleep with Mom tonight. Let Dad sleep with your brothers." "No." "One big and one small," they said in unison. Li Xiqing and Li Mosen looked at each other. Li Xiqing raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at Li Mosen. The little one met Li Xiqing's gaze and her overly white face began to blush. She bowed her head slightly and said, "Ursu, Dad and Mom are husband and wife. They should sleep together. You can't sleep with them. That way you will become a third party." Ming was even choked by his saliva. Why did this family not play by the rules? Is this a third party? Who taught you that? Yu Lily shook her head with a smile and said, "Third parties are not like this. Only those who destroy the relationship between husband and wife are called third parties. Do you know that?" "Yes, this is a third party." Li Xiqing nodded and looked at Li Mosen with a touch of appreciation in his eyes. He said, "Ursu, you are destroying the relationship between Mom and Dad. Do you know that?" Li Jianyue blinked, looked at Li Xiqing and then looked at Su Qianxi. She was a little confused and asked, "Mom, really?" Su Qianxi was speechless for a while and didn't know what to say. "Really? Of course not." But since Li Xiqing said so, she couldn't tell the truth at this time. How could he face the children like this? For a moment she was in a dilemma. Ming coughed softly and said, "Ursu, Uncle can prove that you are not a third party. But if you do this, you are no different from a third party. Don't do this kind of thing, understand? When Li Jianyue heard that, she pursed her lips. Her big eyes were moist. She looked at O Ming and said in disbelief, "Really?" O Ming nodded with a serious look on his face. "It's true, so you have to listen to me." As he spoke, he glanced at the time and said, "It's almost 9 o'clock. Aren't you going to bed yet? Mosen Desu, take your sister to bed." Su Qinsi immediately followed his words and said, "Yes, go and take your sister to bed." Li Mosen was the first to run up and said, "Ursa, let's go." Li Jianyue's tears were in her eyes, and they were about to fall. However, she still climbed down from Su Qinsi's body and followed Li Mosen. However, as her little feet stepped on the ground, her body trembled. She looked back at Su Qinsi 3 times with every step and sniffed before following Li Mosen up the stairs. Li Jianxian said, "Dad, Mom, I'm going too." "Go ahead." He nodded, waved his hand and whispered, "Remember to make your sister happy." "Okay." Li Jianxian nodded and ran up the stairs. "Be careful." Su Qinsi shouted behind him, "Walk slowly. Don't run." Chapter 1087. After the children went up, Li Xiqing picked up the dessert bowl that Su Qinsi had just put down in front of him and scooped a mouthful. O Ming stared at it and said with some surprise, "I thought you don't eat sweets?" Li Xiqing heard the words, glanced at O Ming indifferently and said, "What do you know? My wife's cooking is very delicious." Su Qinsi's cheeks were slightly red, and her ears were hot. She said, "No, he was talking nonsense." However, seeing Li Xiqing's serious look, O Ming was also skeptical, so he also picked up his bowl and took a bite. Li Xiqing's eyes were fixed on O Ming, as if O Ming said one bad word, he could beat him at any time. O Ming nodded seriously, looked at Su Qinsi and said, "It's really good, very delicious. Sister-in-law's cooking is good." Su Qinsi blushed even more and reached out to pat Li Xiqing. Li Xiqing looked back, took another bite and said, "Honey." "Yes." Su Qinsi looked up at Li Xiqing and raised her eyebrows in surprise. "Do you think that boy Mosen likes our daughter?" "What kind of like do you mean?" Su Qinsi looked at Li Xiqing, her eyes wide. "How is it possible? They said they are brother and sister. He himself knows that we are not related by blood, and he has been trembling with us, but he doesn't say it, and he is very careful in his behavior. Did you notice?" Li Xiqing said indifferently, and there was a hint of thought in his deep and cold eyes. "Impossible, he treats her as a sister and such a small child, how can he know so many things?" Su Qinsi denied. "Don't think too much, children are still young." Yu Lily also thought that Li Xiqing was thinking too much and said, "That child is Tang Minjing's child, right? He is only 5 years old this year and he can't have that kind of feeling. He is good to her, isn't it normal for siblings?" When O Ming heard this, he slightly raised his eyebrows, and suddenly thought of the word, "no," that Li Mosen and Li Xiqing had said at the same time. At that time he felt that this little guy who looked young was very sensible. However, after Li Xiqing's reminder, there was still a bit of that feeling. However, could such a young child really have such thoughts? After thinking about it, O Ming said, "I think it's possible. Your daughter is pretty and cute. Which boy wouldn't like her?" When Li Xiqing heard this, he felt as if he had finally found a soulmate. He said, "Right? You think so too? We really can't let them live together anymore. Ursu is right. It's not good for men and women to not touch each other. Ursu kicks off her blanket when she sleeps at night. She can't sleep alone." Su Qinsi looked at Li Xiqing and said, "At night, Mosen will cover Ursu with the quilt. Desu will occasionally wake up to drink water and cover her with the quilt. If it were up to you, our daughter would have frozen to death." As if he didn't hear the rebuke in her words, he said, "Then buy a sleeping bag, tie her up and let her out the next day. Isn't that better?" She glared at him and kicked him rudely. "Are you raising a child or an animal? That is your daughter." Chapter 1088. Hearing that, Su Qinsi felt even more annoyed. She reached out and punched him, shouting, "That's too much." Li Xiqing reached out and caught her fist firmly, the corner of his mouth gently curling up. Su Qinsi's punch missed, and then she raised her other hand, wanting to hit him in the face. Li Xiqing smiled and raised his hand. Unexpectedly, Su Qinsi changed her route halfway, hooked her fist and hit down. The wind of the punch was like a whip. It brought a cool breeze to his face, which was shocking, but it made the smile on Li Xiqing's face deeper. Seeing that Su Qinsi was about to hit his chin, Li Xiqing turned his hand back and grabbed her wrist. The fist was less than a centimeter away from her chin. Li Xiqing pulled her hand, then held her in his arms and whispered, Okay, stop fooling around. There are guests here. Su Chenxi's face turned red and she struggled. Let go. If I let go you'll hit me. I won't let go. Li Xiqing said with a serious face, what I said just now is serious. Look at our daughter, she is so young and she knows to set up a barrier between men and women. It can be seen that this child has begun to grow up, and Mosen seems to have some wild ambitions. I don't want to give my daughter to my son. Hearing that, Su Chenxi felt that what Li Xiqing said was a little reasonable. Li Mosen was their son, and Li Jianyue was their biological daughter. The palm of their hand was flesh and the back of their hand was also flesh. Although they were not related by blood in the eyes of the husband and wife, both children were the same. Not to mention whether they had this possibility, just the possibility that Li Mosen had this idea was enough to make her unable to accept it. This was a bit like watching your own child. This. Su Chenxi suddenly shivered and said, why don't we let Mosen sleep alone and Daesu and Ursu share a room? Idiot, what do you want Mosen to think? Li Xiqing poked her nose and said, aren't you obviously letting Mosen think too much? It's not like you don't know how sensitive this child is. Su Chenxi also felt that something was wrong when she was reminded. This time he was frowning. After thinking about it he said, then let Ursa sleep with us. Anyway, our bed is so big and our daughter is so small. She can sleep in it. No. Li Xiqing refused and said, the bed is big but my place is small. He pointed at his heart and looked at her seriously. If my daughter comes to disturb us in the middle of the night, I will feel uncomfortable. Ugh. Su Chenxi's face burned even hotter, and she subconsciously glanced at Ming and Yu Lily who were not far away. Facing their obvious ambiguous and envious gazes, she was so embarrassed that she couldn't speak. Su Chenxi blushed from her cheeks to the tips of her ears. She lowered her head and whispered, let me go. Lily and the others are still here. Li Xiqing looked indifferent. He glanced at them and said indifferently, what are you afraid of? They are not outsiders. Besides, haven't they seen PDA before? Oh my god. Ming couldn't help but laugh. Second brother, why are you getting more and more shameless? Aren't you afraid of being seen by the children and traumatizing them? People like you who have never had children may not understand, Li Xiqing said. I am shaping the correct concept for my children, telling them that mom and dad are a couple. Chapter 1089. For people like them this was called playing hooligans. Of course, Li Xiqing would not say this out loud. He gave Ming a look to let him figure it out on his own. Then he continued to hold his wife and said, just one sleeping bag for Ursu. Daesu and Mosen don't need sleeping bags. They sleep like me. Hearing that, Su Chenxi, who had calmed down with great difficulty, suddenly exploded again. She turned her head and growled, what do you mean? Like you. Very obedient. Liar. Oh. Yes. Oh. Since you are so determined I can't help it. Su Chenxi heard this and laughed. She hit him and said, shut up. Ming couldn't stand it anymore. He glanced at Yu Lily and said, I used to think that he was a very serious person. I didn't expect this guy to be so coquettish on the inside. I blame myself for being too young. Yu Lily heard this and couldn't help laughing. However, her smile was full of envy. There is nothing else, go back. We're going to sleep. Li Xiqing mercilessly asked her to leave. Even the reason was so simple and rude. Su Chenxi quickly covered his mouth and shouted with a red face, Li Xiqing. What are you talking about? Li Xiqing looked down at her with a little smile in his eyes. Ming felt like he was going blind. He covered his eyes and said, I came to see you, not to see you show off your love and then leave. What's the matter? Li Xiqing raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at Ming. Ming nodded and said, do you know that a chemical called Homaya has recently come out? It was a completely unfamiliar term. Su Chenxi and Yu Lily were both confused. They didn't even know what Homaya was. However, when Li Xiqing heard it, he nodded slightly and said, I have heard a little about it. Ming's eyes lit up. Really? Where did you hear it? At my brother's place. Third brother? Yes, he has a good friend who used to be a military doctor at the front line. Later he retired with my brother and is doing some research on his own. My third brother's company has just started and doesn't have extra cash flow, so he asked me to invest in him. I think that's the name of the project. Oh my god. Ming almost jumped up. Looking at Li Xiqing he was sure that he was not joking. He exclaimed, I'm looking for this now. Second brother, have you invested in that project? A little. I urgently need this medicine to concoct. Can you help me get it? Ming was very excited. He briefly explained his mother's condition. Finally, he looked at Li Xiqing and said seriously, I have to solve this matter first before I can completely get rid of the Shen family. Otherwise, I will be completely controlled by Shen Luo. So, he doesn't have time to deal with me. But I'm afraid that he'll come to look for trouble with our O clan once he recovers. So, got it? Li Xiqing sat up straight and reached out to take the phone from the table. After Li Xiqing hung up the phone, he looked at O Ming and asked, Can I deliver it tomorrow? Yes, that's great. O Ming was extremely excited. He had been worried about this medicine for a long time. He came to Li Xiqing just to give it a try, but he didn't expect. It was rare for him to come to see him, and there was such a big change. Chapter 1090. It was New Year's Eve. The children got up early and arrived at the old house. After greeting the elders, they gathered in the study and watched Li Xiao write the couplets. Old Master Li's hair was almost completely white. His withered hand held a walking stick as he sat by the side and watched his son. Originally, Old Master Li was the one who wrote the couplets. Now that he couldn't hold the pen, he could only leave it to his son. The old man looked at him and reminded him, You need to use more strength. The old voice rang out, and Li Xiao's hand immediately tightened a little. Old Master Li nodded with satisfaction and said, That's right. As he spoke, he looked at the three children and said, Watch how your grandfather writes. You three little guys, you have to practice calligraphy in the future. This is the quintessence of the nation. You can't lose it. Li Jianxian and Li Mosen nodded, and Li Jianyue with a pair of big round eyes asked, Great-grandpa, what is the quintessence of the nation? It is the unique things that have been passed down from ancient times to the present. For example, calligraphy, paper cutting, guqin, chess, books and paintings. These are all quintessence of the nation. In the future, no matter what you do or what you do, don't lose these things. Old Master Li's voice was gentle, with an old but extremely deep calmness. Ursu, come here. Li Jianyue leaned over and called out sweetly, Great-grandpa. The smile on Old Master Li's face condensed. The wrinkles looked a little deep, but it was full of joy. After pulling the little girl over, he said, I'm not worried about your brothers. My grandchildren and great-grandchildren are all excellent children. But the only thing I'm worried about now is you. In the future you must find a good man. At least he can't be worse than your brother. Do you understand? Li Jianyue didn't seem to understand, but soon said with a smile, In the future, I want to marry Brother Mosen. A child's words carried no harm. When such a clear voice came out, Li Xiao's hand trembled slightly. With such a shake, the brush on the originally clean and tidy red paper slightly deviated. Li Mosen's face suddenly turned red, and he turned his head to look at Li Jianyue. However, Old Master Li disagreed and said, What are you talking about? He's your brother. You can't get married. Is that so? Li Jianyue opened her eyes and blinked. But Brother Mosen said so. When Ursa grew up, she would marry Brother Mosen. However, before Li Jianyue could finish her sentence, she heard Li Mosen shout, Ursu shu. Li Jianyue immediately swallowed her words back into her stomach. She raised her fluffy little head and looked at Li Sun with her big eyes. She smiled and said, I know, great-grandfather. Old Master Li looked at Li Jianyue and Li Mosen. He vaguely understood something. He didn't ask or say anything else. He would just let nature take its course. After Li Xiao finished writing, he put down the brush and shouted, Jianxian, go and ask your uncle to come in. Li Jianxian turned and ran out, shouting, Dad, uncle, Grandpa is calling for you. The three brothers were sitting on the sofa chatting. Hearing the child's cry, they knew what was going on. Chapter 1091. After putting up the couplets, Su Qianxi and Qin Shuhua had already prepared dinner. The family sat together and ate happily. Captain Li looked at his children and grandchildren with a smile on his face. The atmosphere at Yu Lily's place was completely different from that of the Li family. O Ming's parents were very concerned about this holiday. O Ming could do whatever he wanted for the 365 days of the year, but on this day he had to have a family reunion dinner at home before going to do his own things. For more than 30 years there had been no exceptions. When Yu Lily woke up early in the morning, her side was already empty. There was a note on the bedside table. It was O Ming's handwriting. On it was written, There is breakfast on the table. Eat it when it's hot. Did O Ming buy it on purpose? She got up and found that her cotton pajamas were wrinkled and a little messy, but they were still intact. After washing up, she went to the dining room to eat and went back to her room to paint. She painted like that for the whole day. Yu Lily continued to paint until she felt hungry. She then opened the curtains in the room. However, when she opened the curtains, she found that the surroundings were already dark. In winter, the sky darkened early. Yulili looked at the time. It was only 5 p.m. After changing and putting on some light makeup, Yulili had a quick meal downstairs before taking a taxi to the place she had arranged to meet Su Qianxi. The art exhibition that Su Qianxi had arranged was held by an artist who had become particularly famous in recent years. He was famous for his personality and his poverty. It was said that the artist was already middle-aged, but he had no wife. It was said that the artist had no family, but he had friends everywhere. He wandered around and left his name everywhere. His name was Wen Fenglin. He was a very unique and frank uncle. He was truly talented. The things that he painted were very distinctive. He liked to combine landscapes and flowers to depict everything. Yulili had only found out about this artist when she was looking for inspiration for his style. People called him the wandering artist. It was 1858 when she took a taxi to the venue. Su Qianxi had a habit of always arriving earlier. No matter what kind of date it was or who it was with, it had always been like this. So when she got out of the car, Yulili looked around but she couldn't find Su Qianxi. When Yulili was about to call and ask where Su Qianxi was, her shoulder suddenly felt warm and heavy. Yulili paused, then turned off the screen of her phone. When she was about to speak, she saw the face behind her. All the words were instantly stuck in her throat. The face behind him was handsome and devilish. A pair of bright, almond-shaped eyes sparkled as he looked at Yulili and asked, "Have you waited long?" Yulili blinked her eyes in a daze. After a long while, she reacted and asked, "Why are you here? Why can't it be me?" Oming raised his eyebrows slightly. "Let's go. The art exhibition is about to begin." His warm palm took Yulili's hand and led her inside without saying a word. Yulili was still in a daze when she entered the venue. She asked, "Today is New Year's Eve." "I know." Oming turned his head. On his slightly evil face, the corners of his lips curled up into an indescribable gentleness. "That's why I came to find you." Chapter 1092. A little bit. Oming seemed to be in a good mood. He pulled her inside. "When I saw my woman at the back, I felt that I was special." "My woman?" Yulili rolled her eyes at him and snorted as she turned her head away. However, there was a faint smile on the corners of her lips. There were faint dimples on both sides of her cheeks. The atmosphere was beautifully decorated by such joy. Oming pulled her in and paid the tickets. The two of them walked side by side into the Kingstown Art Exhibition Center. It was New Year's Eve. For the wandering artist, it might not be a big holiday, but for many people it was a very important day. The day was the time for gatherings. But at night there were many people who came to the art exhibition. As soon as she entered, Yulili was captivated by the unique technique of the first painting. Beside it, there was a sign with the words, "Wen Fenglin's famous work wins first prize at the International Art Competition." The title of the painting was, "The Most Beautiful." At first glance, it was a colorful scene with flowers clustered around it. But, upon closer inspection, there was another kind of beauty to it. The lines of the flowers outlined a flock of birds, like swallows and butterflies. From afar it looked like a young girl sleeping soundly. Her eyes were closed and her long curly hair was tied up. Her beautiful figure was clearly outlined. It was as if a skirt was swaying in the wind. It was as if the young girl in front of him was the flower, the bird, and the butterfly. The lines were perfectly blended, without the slightest sense of incongruity. One look was enough to stun the world. Every part of it was exquisite beyond compare. Every single pattern was just a slightly more exquisite illustration. But, when these ordinary illustrations were put together, they became a painting that was enough to make everyone gasp in admiration. Yulili couldn't help but move closer to the railing to take a closer look. Beautiful. It was indeed the most beautiful. Yulili had never seen such a stunning painting. There was such a painting on the internet, but it was compressed by various websites. It was not as stunning as seeing the real thing up close. Yulili was slightly dazed and couldn't help but say, "It's so beautiful." Oming nodded his head. His eyes couldn't help but be attracted to it. "It's very beautiful." As he spoke, a pair of eyes quietly moved to Yulili, full of tenderness. Yulili looked for a while and found that two girls were constantly taking photos. One of them said, "You're amazing to be able to get such a ticket. Send me the photos later. I'm going to post them on my WeChat Moments to show off." Yulili's tranquil mood, which had been brought by the painting in front of her, disappeared without a trace in such words. Such a beautiful work of art was so beautiful that it transcended the mortal world. Saying such a thing was undoubtedly a great blasphemy to it. Lily looked up at the words on the bulletin board. It was clearly said, "No photos are allowed." Lily seemed to have found a reason to speak, so she stepped forward and said with a little anger, "It seems that it has been clearly stated that no photos are allowed. Can't you see it? Mr. Painter didn't put his painting here for you to take pictures and post them on your moments." Chapter 1093. When Lily was about to say something, her hand was pulled by Ming, and without a word they walked inside. Lily didn't understand, so she turned to look at Ming. Ming's footsteps were a little fast. After he pulled her inside, he breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Silly girl, you are too impulsive. If they want to take pictures, let them take pictures. If you talk about them like that, you might be recognized." When Lily heard that, she suddenly reacted. She was a little surprised and covered her mouth, feeling a little annoyed. "I forgot." Ming was a little helpless, so he pulled her inside. The exhibition center was very big and there were a lot of paintings hanging. As Lily and Ming walked in, they were attracted by all kinds of paintings, but the style was the same and beautiful. Whether it was the brushwork or the color, they couldn't help but be amazed. That day was New Year's Eve, so there were a lot of people in Kingstown. However, such an art exhibition wasn't something that just anyone could attend. Although there were a lot of people along the way compared to the sea of people outside, it was quiet and relaxed. Seeing the end, Lily still felt a little unsatisfied. Every painting was very exquisite and beautiful. "There's another pair here," someone called out from behind. Lily instinctively turned her head around to look. It was a woman who looked like she was wearing expensive clothes. Hearing the woman say that, the people who were originally behind the woman all walked up. However, their footsteps were obviously not as long as any of the paintings in front of them. After a few glances, they turned and walked away. Behind them, another group of people went up, but the result was the same. Lily couldn't help but go up and look at the paintings closely. All the paintings in front of her looked colorful, bold, and full of personality. From the paintings, one could imagine that this wandering artist was a very bold and unruly person. All the paintings along the way were of women, and there were even paintings of men and women together naked. Bold, beautiful, and a little erotic. However, this final painting was much simpler than any of the previous ones. In fact, it could even be said that this painting was completely out of place compared to the previous ones. Lily heard Ming's questioning voice, and she couldn't help but go forward to take a closer look. The entire painting was beige in color, from all sides to the inside, from light to dark. At the very center, the light beige color had already turned into a light brown color, forming an umbilical cord. The faint lines outlined a baby, sucking on his fingers with his eyes closed. There was filth on his body which looked like bloodstains. However, it was different from the misty lines in the previous paintings. The lines in this painting were very clear and the colors were darker. Even his brushwork and colors were completely different. It was as if it was painted by another person. When Ming saw this, he raised his eyebrows slightly and said, "This shouldn't have been painted by the same person, right? The difference between their styles is too big." Lily looked at the painting in front of her and said, "It was painted by a single person." As she spoke, she leaned closer to look at the paper. The overall color of the painting is beige, but the paper doesn't look like it's made in modern times. It must have been painted a long time ago. What do you know? An explosive shout rang out without the slightest bit of precaution. The voice was very familiar. Both Ming and Lily felt their hearts skip a beat in shock. Chapter 1094. Both Lily and Ming turned their heads almost at the same time. When they saw the person behind them, Ming couldn't believe it and cried out, "Mom?" Lily had never met Xiao Ziqing, but she had heard her voice. However, when she heard Ming's shout, her heart skipped a beat. Subconsciously, she wanted to hide. Looking at Xiao Ziqing in front of her, she unconsciously took a step back. Xiao Ziqing looked at Ming in front of her and said angrily, "Didn't you say you were going to meet Li Ziqing? Is this Li Ziqing?" Hearing Xiao Ziqing's words, Lily suddenly felt a little sad. His chest tightened and he turned to look at Ming. Ming was speechless for a while. When he saw the eyes around him, his face quickly darkened. He said, "Mom, this is an art exhibition. If you have anything to say, let's talk about it at home." "Little Xiao, why are you so angry? If you have something to say it nicely." A middle-aged man's voice came from behind Xiao Ziqing. His voice sounded a little hoarse as if he had a sore throat. Following the voice, Zhang Xian saw a middle-aged man. He looked to be in his 40s or 50s and wore a pair of black-rimmed glasses. His gray hair was tied behind his head. He walked over with a smile on his face. There were 2 dimples on both sides of his cheeks, and he looked very peaceful. He was slightly plump and wore an old-fashioned gray Chinese tunic suit. It was very clean and tidy, but it also looked very unique. On his slightly rough left hand was a slightly black silver ring. It was a simple design, but on his hand, it was indescribably fitting. Qiao Ziqing turned her head and saw Wen Fenglin. Her anger flared as she said, "How can I not be angry? This is the woman I told you about who keeps pestering my son. Of all the things she could have done at such a young age, why did she choose to be a mistress? Didn't your parents teach you to have self-respect? You even encouraged my son to lie. What Li Ziqing? He was just fooling around with you." When Ming heard that, his originally respectful expression immediately darkened. He took a step forward and hid Lily behind him. With some dissatisfaction he yelled, "Mom, what you said is too unpleasant to listen to. She's my girlfriend now, not some mistress." You're actually talking back to me for this woman? Do you even know who I am?" Qiao Ziqing was so angry that her eyes turned red. She wanted to go up and teach Ming a lesson, but she was held back by the people behind her. She turned around and saw that it was Wen Fenglin. Wen Fenglin tugged at her coat and gently tugged it back. "Let's talk this out. Xiao Qiao, you weren't such a rash person in the past. Why are you so impulsive now? You don't understand the situation at all. This woman is too much. Not only did she make my son fall head over heels for her, she even set a trap. Enough." Wen Fenglin cut off Qiao Ziqing's voice. The words that were on the tip of Qiao Ziqing's tongue stopped abruptly. The people around them heard the commotion and looked over. The smile on Wen Fenglin's face was no longer there. He said, "If you have anything to say, let's talk inside." Lily stood in the same place, feeling uncomfortable. Chapter 1095. Misunderstanding? I don't think it's something that can be resolved with just a simple sentence. Lily's eyes darkened when she heard that. She looked up at Ming and saw his serious expression. She nodded her head. More and more people were looking over. Ming covered Lily and followed Wen Fenglin into the room. It was a lounge with 2 easels. On the table next to it, there were not only paints for painting, but also a bunch of colored pencils and markers. After Wen Fenglin closed the door and windows, Qiao Ziqing couldn't hold it in any longer. She turned around and saw Ming escorting Lily into the room. Her anger flared up. This kid is crazy. He's actually been bewitched by a vixen. How can such a woman be worthy of the family? How can she be worthy of Ming? Qiao Ziqing walked forward and pulled her son over forcefully. She shouted, "Xiao, go home first. I have something to say to this young lady." This young lady? There wasn't anything wrong with that form of address. But in Lily's ears, it was so piercing. Looking at Qiao Ziqing before her, she realized that this rich madame's face didn't hide her disgust at all. Her eyes were filled with contempt and disdain. It was exactly the same as the way Lida's wife had looked at her back in the imperial capital. But Qiao Ziqing's eyes were even more blatant and disgusted than that woman's. Lily didn't feel good in her heart, but on the surface she still maintained the calmness from before. "Mom, if there's anything you want to say, we can talk it out face to face. There's no need to ask me to leave. I think you have some misunderstanding about Lily." "Misunderstanding?" Qiao Ziqing looked at her coldly. "There's no misunderstanding. Xiao, you're blinded by the situation. What's so good about this woman? She has no upbringing, no culture, and no inner qualities. Does she think she can seduce my son just because she has a pretty face?" With just a few tricks up her sleeve, she was able to bring Xin Manting and Xin Luo down together. She was indeed formidable. But such a vicious woman must never be allowed into their family. Qiao Ziqing looked at Lily with an even more indescribable disgust and impatience. "I like her, so I'm willing to be with her. Lily is a very good girl. You must have some misunderstandings about her. There are some things that we can discuss at home. I'll explain them to you slowly when we get back." "Mom." Ming's mood dropped even further and he said in a low voice, "I know exactly what I'm doing. There's no need." Qiao Ziqing shouted, "Fenglin is my good friend, not an outsider." With that, she looked in Wen Fenglin's direction and said, "Fenglin, this is my son. His name is O." Based on Ming's current reputation and achievements, Wen Fenglin had long heard of his name. He smiled and nodded at Ming. He extended his hand and said, "The younger generation will surpass the older. I'm Wen Fenglin. Hello. Hello, Mr. Wen. Ming gently shook Wen Fenglin's hand but quickly let go. What, Mr. Wen? Call him Uncle Wen. Qiao Ziqing corrected. Ming didn't immediately change his words. He looked at Qiao Ziqing with an unhappy expression and said, Mom, there are some things we should talk about when we get back. It's not convenient to talk outside. Chapter 1096. Qiao Ziqing's words were impolite. Every word was filled with disgust for Yu Lily. Yu Lily calmed herself down and said, Auntie? What auntie? Didn't your mother teach you not to address me as you please? Call me Mrs. O. Qiao Ziqing's words were harsh. When Ming heard that, his face darkened. He called out, Mom? But Qiao Ziqing didn't give him a chance to finish his sentence. She cut him off and looked at Yu Lily. In a sharp voice she said, Before Manting became the future daughter-in-law of the O family, she called me auntie. Do you think you can be on equal footing with Manting? In Qiao Ziqing's eyes, she couldn't. Such words were obviously disdainful and humiliating. It was extremely disrespectful. It was the most humiliating thing Yu Lily had ever heard in her life. Even what Ming had said in the past couldn't compare to the humiliation that Qiao Ziqing's words had inflicted on her. Just as she was about to retort, she heard the middle-aged man's voice. The smile on Wen Fenglin's face had long disappeared. He said, Xiao, you've gone overboard with your words. Regardless of why you hate this lady so much, everyone should be equal. Isn't it inappropriate for you to categorize them in such a manner? Wen Fenglin asked. When Qiao Ziqing heard that, she subconsciously recalled the background of Wen Fenglin and her best friend. Her voice faltered and she quickly said, Fenglin, I didn't mean anything by it. Regardless of whether you meant anything by it or not, don't you think it's a little cruel to treat a child this way? Wen Fenglin's eyes were filled with regret. This child looks much younger than your son. Xiao, if you have anything to say, calm down and say it. Because you would never know which sentence you would say would become a lifetime of pain for the child. It would become the key to their separation. When Qiao Ziqing saw Wen Fenglin's expression, she knew that she might have said the wrong thing. She waved her hand and said, Fenglin, sit down and talk calmly, Wen Fenglin said. I'll get someone to brew some tea. There's no need, Fenglin. Wen Fenglin had already turned around and walked to the door of the lounge. There's no need, Mr. Wen, Yu Lily called out. When Wen Fenglin heard Yu Lily's voice, he froze on the spot and turned his head. Yu Lily continued, I don't think I have anything to say to Ming's mother. As she spoke, she looked at Qiao Ziqing and said, Auntie, to me, other than being Ming's mother, you are not worthy of any respect. His voice was sonorous as he looked at Qiao Ziqing. There was no hesitation in his words, and there was a hint of anger in them. Qiao Ziqing was so angry that she laughed. What? Ming was shocked. He quickly covered her mouth and said, What are you talking about? Don't say it. Qiao Ziqing was a person who couldn't take criticism. At home, even Ming's father didn't dare to say anything to her. Over the years, Qiao Ziqing had been spoiled. Coupled with her rapid rise in status, ordinary people rarely spoke to her like this. Qiao Ziqing already had a bad opinion of Yu Lily. If she were to say that out loud, she was afraid. Chapter 1097. Seeing that Qiao Ziqing was obviously going to explode, Ming closed his eyes and cursed in his heart. Yu Lily removed Ming's hand and continued, It was my fault for calling you auntie just now. I thought that you were an elder, but the way you have always spoken doesn't make me feel like an elder. I think an elder should have the attitude of an elder to teach the younger generation. But with all due respect, this is the first time I've met you. Apart from your age, I don't see any of the attitude of an elder. In other words, she was saying that Qiao Ziqing was taking advantage of her seniority. Even women couldn't stand being called old, let alone Qiao Ziqing. Shut up. Qiao Ziqing was furious. Who do you think you are? What right do you have to lecture me? I don't have the right to lecture you, Yu Lily said. I'm just saying what I think. I think what I said is the same as you saying that I can't be on equal footing with Shen Manting, right? Qiao Ziqing was so angry that her face turned red. She said angrily, What I said is the truth. What I said is also the truth. Yu Lily's eyes darkened. She continued, We are all honest people. You say the truth and I say the truth. Then we are even. But could they really be even? From the beginning, the disparity between her and Ming's mother's status was huge. Now, her behavior was undoubtedly lowering her image in front of Ming's mother. It was unfair. However, such an action made Yu Lily's mood, which had been depressed for a long time, relax for a moment. She felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off her shoulders. Qiao Ziqing was so angry that she laughed. Do you know what you are saying? You are cutting off your own path. I can't let you into my family. You want to be with my son? In your dreams. She had expected it. But hearing this, Yu Lily still felt suffocated. Uncomfortable. She wanted to be with Ming. She really wanted to be with him. But, regardless of identity, background, or values, she was incompatible with this family. Looking at Qiao Ziqing, who seemed to have the upper hand, Yu Lily felt a little funny. Could it be that if I didn't say anything, you would let me be with Ming? Dream on. Qiao Ziqing sneered. My son will never marry a woman like you. If others were to find out that our son had married a woman like you, they would probably laugh at us. So, the result is the same. Yu Lily smiled, but there was a hint of sadness in her smile. I'm sorry. Qiao Ziqing was even more pleased with herself. She looked at Yu Lily and coldly said, There's no use regretting it. I will never accept you. You misunderstood. I'm sorry that Ming has a mother like you. The smugness in Qiao Ziqing's heart vanished without a trace as she snapped coldly, What do you mean by that? All right. Ming interrupted them with a sullen face. He grabbed Yu Lily and said in a cold voice, Anyway, my mother is an elder. Yu Lily, apologize to my mother. Apologize. Hearing that, Yu Lily pursed her lips and looked up at him. Ming's pair of bright peach blossom eyes hid a deep and incomprehensible emotion. On one side was her mother, on the other side was her lover. How could she choose? Chapter 1098. Yu Lily suddenly found it funny. She chuckled and said, Ming, I'm sorry. Ming's heart sank when he heard that. At the same time, he saw that on her seemingly smiling face, there seemed to be an unconcealable sadness. In the depths of that smile there was disappointment. Ming's heart skipped a beat. He gave her a meaningful look and lowered his eyes. Don't apologize to me. Apologize to my mother. Apologize. Otherwise, what will happen in the future? Apologize. Otherwise, my mother will bear a grudge against me. He wouldn't marry someone else and he wouldn't let me marry someone else. Qiao Ziqing had never been a magnanimous person. If he gave her a way out of this embarrassing situation, there might be room for redemption in the future. If things really became that bad, then what will happen in the future? But Yu Lily couldn't read his eyes. She vaguely felt that Ming had something to say, but the grievance in her heart had already surpassed her reason. Yu Lily laughed and said, I'm sorry. I don't think I said anything wrong. Besides, Yu Lily. Ming shouted and interrupted her. He put his hands on her shoulders and looked at her imploringly. Apologize. It's the new year. Don't make the elders unhappy, okay? Yu Lily could clearly see the emotions in Ming's eyes. Her heart trembled. This guy. What does he mean? For my mother? What does that expression mean? Ming's back was facing Qiao Ziqing. That angle also happened to block Yu Lily's view. Yu Lily only heard Qiao Ziqing laugh coldly and say with some disdain, Xiao, do you still expect her to apologize to me? If such a girl had intended to apologize to me, she wouldn't have said so many rude words just now. It's too late to make up for it now. It's too late to make up for it now. Yes, if I apologize, isn't it the same as making up for it? Moreover, this woman was so overbearing. Even if he apologized, she might not forgive him. She might even say a lot of nasty things. Just like, Ming. After all, they are mother and son. Their personalities and mouths were so similar. Yu Lily chuckled and took his hands away. She looked at Qiao Ziqing coldly and said, As Mr. Wen said, everyone is equal. Your mother is an elder but not an elder. I don't think I'm wrong. Enough. The middle-aged man's voice sounded a little hoarse. When Fenglin's voice was calm. He looked at Yu Lily and said, Xiao Qiao, it's true that you were in the wrong today. But young lady, your temper is too bad. No matter what, this is your boyfriend's mother. How could Yu Lily not know that? When she heard Wen Fenglin's words, she found it strange. Xiao Qiao, calm down. You've lived for decades after all. Don't make such a fuss on New Year's Eve. Today is my art exhibition and I thank all of you for your support. But if word gets out about this, Wen Fenglin won't be able to keep my face. Wen Fenglin's voice carried a hint of a smile as he spoke. His eyes, which had thick, double-lidded eyes, seemed to be filled with longing. Dimples appeared on both sides of his cheeks and his smile was infectious. Although he had a smile on his face, he exuded an indescribable sense of dignity. He was peaceful yet intimidating. Chapter 1099. Is this uncle just a wandering painter? His aura, as well as the aura and authority that he exuded when he spoke, made him look extraordinary. She had thought that the legendary painter was just an unkempt uncle. Unkempt, unshaven, reeking of alcohol, or hunched over, he looked like an ordinary person. But when Fenglin was completely different. As expected, the moment when Fenglin spoke, Xiao Ziqing shut her mouth and didn't say another word. When Fenglin smiled at Yu Lily and said, "Young people shouldn't be so hot-tempered. Go outside and get some fresh air." "Xiao O, aren't you going to take your girlfriend out?" "No way." Xiao Ziqing immediately shouted. She reached out and tugged at Ming. "Xiao O, come back with me. It's New Year's Eve. What's the meaning of fooling around with an outsider? Go home now." Outsider. Fooling around. When Yu Lily heard those two words, she felt even more uncomfortable. Ming flung Xiao Ziqing's hand away and said, "Mom, you and Uncle Wen haven't seen each other in a long time. You two should catch up." As he spoke, he pulled Yu Lily out of the house. Xiao Ziqing was furious and shouted, "Xiao O, where are you going now?" But Ming didn't reply. He just pulled Yu Lily out. Xiao Ziqing instinctively wanted to chase after them, but when Fenglin held her back. When Fenglin looked in the direction they had left and said, "Xiao Qiao, the children are all grown up. You shouldn't interfere so much. Let them sort it out themselves. You don't know the situation at all. That woman is very bad. She was an orphan from a young age. She didn't have parents. Not only is her upbringing lacking, but she's also very vicious. She was the one who exposed the incident with Shen Manting and Shen Luo on." "What incident?" When Fenglin frowned. Xiao Ziqing briefly explained the incident. When she was done, she said angrily, "That woman's motives are impure. She was in the capital for 4 years. Who knows how many people trampled on her in those 4 years? I won't let such a woman into our family. Absolutely not." Xiao Ziqing's tone was firm. When Fenglin could hear the seriousness in her words. When Fenglin furrowed his brows and said, "How could that be? That girl doesn't seem like that sort of person." "She's that kind of person." "Sigh, Fenglin, you haven't been in Kingstown for too long. You don't know that the girls here are different from the people you've interacted with." "I don't think so." As when Fenglin spoke, he seemed to recall something and asked, "Oh, right. You mentioned earlier that this lady is actually an orphan?" "Yes. But I seem to have heard you mention her mother several times just now. Did I hear wrong?" Xiao Ziqing froze for a moment before she scoffed coldly and said, "I did it on purpose. I know she doesn't have a mother, so there's no one to discipline her, so, you purposely picked on her sore spot?" When Fenglin was amused. He looked at Xiao Ziqing helplessly and said, "You haven't changed at all. If Xian'er were still here, she'd definitely want to beat you up." Hearing the name Xian'er, Xiao Ziqing felt a little lonely. She said, "Fenglin, I miss her so much." Chapter 1100. This was the worst New Year's Eve that Yu Lily had ever had. Yu Lily had never been so depressed on New Year's Eve in her 25 years of life. After being pulled out by Ming, the two of them went straight outside. There were a lot of people outside and it was bustling. Yu Lily shivered as the cold air hit her. Ming held her in his arms and whispered, "Are you cold?" Yu Lily pushed him away with some resistance, lowered her head and walked forward. Ming had already reached out to grab her, but Yu Lily's pace was a little fast and there were a lot of people, so she was pushed away. "Yu Lily!" Ming shouted, but Yu Lily didn't look back and walked through the crowd. Ming pushed through the crowd and chased after her. His eyes were fixed on Yu Lily's back for fear of losing her. But Yu Lily's pace became faster and faster, and soon she was out on the road. She strode forward and squeezed into the queue for the subway. When Ming saw that, he became anxious and shouted, "Yu Lily, stop!" But there were too many people and it was too noisy. Ming's shout was quickly drowned out by the crowd, and it didn't cause the slightest ripple. Ming followed her all the way to the line and watched her enter the subway station. She took out a subway card from nowhere and easily swiped it to enter the station. When Ming saw that, he was a little confused and shouted, "Yu Lily!" But Yu Lily was still indifferent, as if she didn't hear what he said. Watching Yu Lily get off the escalator, he sighed. He reached into his pocket, intending to take out his cell phone to call Yu Lily, but it was empty. Not only the phone, but even the black wallet that had been quietly lying in his pocket had disappeared without a trace at the same time. Looking at the bustling crowd in front of him, Ming sighed heavily. It was past 8 o'clock in the evening, the rush hour of the New Year's Eve. When the subway arrived, Lily had no time to move, and she was squeezed onto the train by a bunch of people. At the next station, Lily couldn't hear the announcement at all, and she was directly squeezed out of the train by the crowd. And she hadn't even arrived at the station. Lily watched helplessly as the doors of the train closed and left. Her heart felt like it was being crushed by a rock. He opened his bag and took out his phone. However, not a single phone call. Not even a text message. Bastard. He didn't even make a phone call? Thinking of how he had asked her to apologize, Lily felt a dull pain in her heart. 2 more buses passed by, but Lily couldn't get on either. On the 3rd trip he finally went up. When he got home it was already past 9 o'clock. A tall figure stood at the door. He was wearing a dark suit with dark patterns underneath a long black windbreaker. When he saw Lily walking over, he straightened up and asked, "Why are you back so late? Where did you go?" When Lily saw him, she didn't want to talk to him at all. She took out her keys and opened the door. Ming watched her open the door. Just as she was about to close the door, he blocked it with his hand and walked in. Lily originally just wanted to throw a little tantrum. Seeing that she couldn't stop him, she simply ignored him and let him come in. She turned around and prepared to go back to her room. Chapter 11:01. There was a touch of grievance in her voice, which sounded quite coquettish. Hearing that, Lily turned her head and looked at him in surprise. As soon as she turned her head, she met Ming's dark brown eyes. They were very deep, bright, and so beautiful that it made people lose their minds. Ming buried his face in her neck and whispered, "My legs are so sore. Give me a massage." "How could it be stolen?" "I don't know. I put it in my coat pocket. I wanted to call you but I found it was gone." Ming's voice was low. "Fortunately, I have a good memory. I knew your house was here, so I walked for more than 20 minutes. I didn't expect you to arrive later than me." Lily was about to speak, but Ming took her hand and touched his thigh. With a coquettish voice she whispered, "Sore." Lily lost her temper. After pulling her hand back, she glared at him and then pulled him into the room. Closing the door, Lily walked in, loosened the muscles and bones of her hands and said, "Lie down and I will give you a massage." "Okay." Ming smiled and took off his suit jacket. Then he pulled Lily's pillow over and lay down. Lily also took off her coat, then took off his shoes and socks and began to massage his legs. Ming originally just wanted to make her feel better, but he didn't expect that Lily's skill was really good. So comfortable. Ming squinted and looked down at her. Lily lowered her head, and her face was indescribably serious. Her eyebrows were lowered, her lips were pursed, and her face was decorated with light makeup. Under the soft light in the room, she looked even more gentle and peaceful. So beautiful. Today's Lily was even more beautiful than before. Lily seemed to notice his gaze and looked up at him. Then she lowered her head and said while massaging, "When I was in the capital, I had a beauty salon." Ming didn't know there was such a story, so he was a little surprised and asked, "Why didn't you do it later?" "That beauty salon's business was not good, so it closed down. Later, I went to work as a computer." While speaking, she put her legs together and massaged Ming's calves. Just by listening to it, Ming could tell that it wasn't easy. He reached out to hold her hand and Lily's movements stopped. She looked up and saw the softness on Ming's face. Ming took her hand and let her lean on his chest. He held her in his arms and whispered, "From now on, you can just draw at home. I'm just painting now." Lily placed her hands on his chest and looked up at him. "My life is much better than before. Even without you I can still live. Even without you I can still live very well." There was nothing they couldn't get through. It was impossible for anyone to not be able to survive without each other. There was a look of pity on Ming's face and he gently stroked her hair. Lily's hair grew very fast and now it reached her neck. Her bangs covered her eyebrows, making her face look smaller and thinner. "It'll be better in the future, I promise." Hearing that, Lily's lips curled up. She leaned forward and lowered her head to kiss him on the lips. Chapter 11:02. The passionate kiss was overwhelming. Lily placed her hands on his chest and passionately responded to his passion. His lips gradually moved down from her lips to her chin, her jaw, her earlobe, the tip of her ear. Her skin, which was already fair and tender, gradually turned pink under the heat. His big hands gently unbuttoned her blouse and wandered around her wantonly. Lily narrowed her eyes and moved her hands up his chest. One hand circled his neck, and the other hand gently unbuttoned his shirt. They had known each other for a long, long time. Many things didn't need to be said. They had a tacit understanding. The temperature in the room was very high, and both of them were covered with a thin layer of moisture. However, at the last step, Lily suddenly stopped and pushed him away. Ming's peach blossom eyes were full of lust. At the same time he was confused. Looking at Lily's nervous expression, he asked, "What's wrong? Today is New Year's Eve. Why don't you go home? Your mother seems a little fierce. Don't go back and encourage your father to hit you." Hearing that, Ming laughed and reached out to pinch her nose. He said helplessly, "You're exaggerating. You'd better go home. After all, today is New Year's Eve." In the past, Ming had never spent New Year's Eve with Lily. Even when they were together like today, it had never happened before. It was because of Ming's upbringing that he had persisted for so many years. This year, his mother knew that he was with her. If he didn't go home, he was afraid that his fate would be very ugly. As for Ming, when he heard this, he automatically understood it to mean something else. Looking at the woman under him, Ming's eyes seemed to be covered with a thin layer of mist. He leaned down slightly and touched her cheek with his big hand. His thumb gently rubbed her face. His voice was a little hoarse because of his lust. He whispered, "Are you not ready yet? Are you cold, not cured yet?" Lily blinked and shook her head. "No." When Ming heard that word, he calmed down. He bowed his head and sealed the rest of her words in her mouth. At the same time, with one move, Lily groaned and subconsciously reached out to hug him. Her breathing became rapid. Ming released her and stopped moving. He asked, "Does it hurt?" Lily's breathing quickened as she replied, "It doesn't hurt." "Oh." Ming opened his mouth and bit her collarbone. His voice was muffled as he said, "I'm not going back today. Let's spend the new year together." When Lily heard that, she was secretly happy and unconsciously raised her lips. She opened her eyes and noticed that Ming was also looking at her. Lily felt a little uncomfortable and passively withstood his attack. Waves of feeling came over her, and her hands holding him tightened. Gasping for air, Lily stuttered, "That New Year's isn't like this. What's it like?" Compared to Lily, Ming's voice was much more normal. It made Lily's face heat up. But she still hugged him and said, "New Year, watch the Spring Festival Gala? Countdown. New Year. Slow down." Chapter 11:03. Lily was shocked. She quickly refused and said, "No." However, Ming had already picked her up. No. Lily clung to him tightly and whispered, "Stay inside. We can go out when we're done. What if Yi Chanshan suddenly comes back?" "She won't come back. She went home for the new year." "No." Lily resisted loudly and clamped her legs together. "Stay inside or you'll what?" Ming asked with a smile. "I'll bite you." Because Ming didn't make any big movements, Lily's voice was much clearer. When Ming heard that, he raised his eyebrows slightly and put her back on the bed. "If you want me, I'll fulfill your wish." Lily was about to speak, but then she couldn't say anything. Lily had no idea how many times she had done it, but she was exhausted. Her eyelids drooped and she felt sleepy. Ming pulled a shirt and put it on. Then he carried her to the bathroom and helped her bathe and wipe her body. After the two of them finished bathing together, Ming carried her back again. He put on a shirt. When he came back to his senses, Lily was already asleep. Smiling, Ming looked at the time. It was already past 11:40. There were only 10 minutes left until the first day of the new year. After putting on the shirt, he carried her to the living room and turned on the TV. Many TVs were broadcasting the Spring Festival Gala. This is the atmosphere of the new year. When he turned around, Lily had already opened her eyes and was watching the TV. Ming held her in his arms and said, "The countdown is about to start. Does this count as us spending 2 years together?" Lily turned her head away and snorted. She closed her eyes slightly, but her lips were full of smiles. Ming put her on his lap, held her hand in his and played with her fingers. He said, "Tonight you and my mother had a bit of a fight. My mother is a person who cares a lot about her reputation. You contradicted her like that, so she will definitely bear a grudge against you. That's why I asked you to apologize to her." She looked into his eyes, and his eyes moved from her fingers to her face. "That Uncle Wen is my mother's best friend. However, it was my first time seeing him. Fortunately, he helped me out of the situation. Otherwise, it would have been even uglier." As she spoke, she sighed faintly. "Why can't you read my eyes? Next time when I ask you to do something in front of my mother, you must listen to me. Otherwise it won't be easy in the future. His words made it clear that he was treating Yu Lily as a member of the O family. But, Yu Lily looked down and said, "Your mother hates me very much. I could tell from the many things she said last night that she was deliberately trying to embarrass me. I will make her accept you." Ming turned her face in his hands and said, "Let's have a child. When the time comes she will have to accept you even if she doesn't want to." Speaking of this, Ming lowered his eyes to look at her lower abdomen. He gently stroked it and said, "Could it be that my child is already here?" Yu Lily also bowed her head, feeling a little magical. She reached out and placed her hand on his. She even calmed down to feel it. After all, from the time they met until now they had only done it a few times. But each time they had not taken any protective measures. Could it be that without knowing it I am already pregnant? Chapter 11:04. Marriage. What a sacred word. All Yu Lily wanted was to marry Ming and be with him forever. She looked up and found that Ming had been looking at her. His peach blossom eyes were bright at that moment. It looked like two bright mirrors clearly reflecting her and only her. "Let's welcome the new year. There are only 30 seconds left." The infectious voice came from the television. When Ming heard it, he smiled and said, "The countdown has begun." Yu Lily felt a little magical. She snuggled into his arms and whispered, "This seems to be the first time we're celebrating the new year together." "Yes." Ming gazed at her and kissed her on the cheek. "For the next 50 times we'll be together." 10, 9, 8, 7. Ming kissed her on the lips. The person on the television was still shouting, 3, 2, 1. Ming released her and said in a low voice, "Happy New Year." Yu Lily felt a lump in her throat. She hugged him and replied, "Happy New Year." Ming chuckled. After turning off the television, he carried her back to the room. When Yu Lily woke up, the sky was already bright. Yu Lily felt a sense of security when she felt the warmth from his body. She reached out and hugged him. Yu Lily burrowed into his arms. Ming was awakened by her. When he opened a corner of his eyes, he saw her dark head. The corners of his lips curled up a little. He stretched out his long legs and placed them on top of her. With a hook, the two of them were pressed together seamlessly. Yu Lily maintained that position for a while. Soon she couldn't take it anymore. She moved and said, "It's uncomfortable." Ming released her and said, "It's the first day of the new year. Where do you want to go?" When Yu Lily heard that, she looked up at him. All she saw was his slightly pale chin. She poked it with her finger and asked, "Don't you need to go home?" His chin was tickled by her poking. Ming grabbed her naughty hand and asked, "Do you want to go?" "No." "Then don't go." Ming looked down at her and whispered, "Are you hungry?" "I'm not hungry." When Ming heard that, he nodded slightly in satisfaction. His big hand slipped into her clothes and he said in a low and charming voice, "Then let's do some exercise." "No. It's itchy, don't touch there, and." After the shower, Yu Lily couldn't stand the hunger. After the two of them got dressed, Yu Lily wiped something on her face and prepared to leave. Ming was still wearing the same clothes as yesterday. After Yu Lily came out, they went downstairs together. There were many restaurants nearby. After the two of them ate a little and walked out, they inadvertently saw a flashy Bentley driving to the entrance of their neighborhood. Such a car was not something that ordinary people could afford to drive. Yu Lily looked at the car and found it familiar. On the other hand, Ming had obviously recognized the owner of the car. He pulled Yu Lily along and whispered, "Let's go." "Stop right there." Xiao Ziqing's voice rang out and it shocked Yu Lily. He turned around and saw Xiao Ziqing dressed in a pink fur coat and elegant makeup. She was very eye-catching. He was looking for Ming. Chapter 11:05. Yu Lily was a little confused when she heard that. Was this guy serious? Isn't he supposed to be obedient to his mother? Now he wants to elope? Before Yu Lily could react, she was pulled by Ming and ran forward. Ming's legs were long and fast, so he ran very fast. Yu Lily couldn't keep up with him when he pulled her. She stumbled and almost fell. Ming's eyes and hands were sharp. He immediately caught Yu Lily and saved her from falling. When Ming's mother saw their behavior, she was so angry that her lungs were about to explode. She shouted, "Ming, get back here." But it was Ming who had instigated it. How could he stop? No matter how loud Xiao Ziqing shouted, Ming had no intention of stopping. Instead, he pulled Yu Lily farther and farther away. Little B** starred. Qiao Ziqing's face was red with anger. She turned back to the car and said, "Catch up. Hurry up." The luxurious Bentley was immediately started and chased in the direction that Ming and Yu Lily were running. It was close to the train tracks. When Yu Lily was pulled across the tracks by Ming, she always felt a sense of crisis. She shouted, "Ming, slow down. What if a train comes?" Ming looked back at Yu Lily and chuckled. He seemed to be in a good mood. The roar of the train came from the tracks that had been crossed behind them. The deafening sound completely blocked out the bustling scene behind them. Ming pulled her and shouted excitedly, "At most, we will die together. Yu Lily, marry me." Yu Lily was shocked. She followed him at a crazy pace and ran all the way. The wind was blowing. It was a little cold. But there was an unknown heat in Yu Lily's heart. It was quickly spreading and burning her whole body. Ta! The long whistle of the train came from the front. Not far away, a train was moving forward at high speed. Yu Lily was shocked. She quickly pulled Ming and screamed, "Don't go over there. It's dangerous." Ming's footsteps quickly came to a halt. He stopped just one step away from the train tracks. At the same time, Ming stopped and turned his head. He looked into Yu Lily's peach blossom eyes and his eyes were shining. Such a scorching gaze seemed to be filled with deep love, and it made Yu Lily's heart tremble. Boom, 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 as the train passed by, it caused the surroundings to tremble. It was as if the whole person was shaken to the point that they were about to fly. Ming hugged her with both hands and whispered in her ear, "Marry me. We'll be together in the future." Your mother? Act first and report later? What can she do? Even if she doesn't agree with us being together, I won't divorce you. Legally, she has no right to interfere with our relationship. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of the train continued with a crazy vibration just like Yu Lily's mood at the moment. Yu Lily looked at him as if she was looking at a lunatic and asked, "Are you crazy?" "Don't you know if I'm crazy or not?" Ming chuckled. He looked up and saw the Bentley behind Yu Lily. Chapter 1106. Eloping. Inexplicably, Yu Lily felt a little excited in the face of Ming's crazy attitude. The train behind Ming walked away, and the loud roar gradually faded away. Behind him, the sun shone on him, making him look like a god. His eyes were bright and affectionate. Yu Lily subconsciously raised her lips and nodded her head. In a flash, Ming chuckled, took her hand and ran forward. When the people in the Bentley saw them run again, they were even more furious. Yu Lily subconsciously looked back at the Bentley behind her and found that the car had already taken a detour. Seeing Ming's mother being defeated, Yu Lily was secretly happy. However, when she looked back, she didn't find that the people in front of her had stopped. When she looked back, she found that they had reached another road. Just on the left side, a car drove over. Yu Lily screamed and subconsciously stepped back, but before she could move, she was pulled by a strong arm and held in his arms. Yu Lily's heart was beating fast. Obviously, she was very scared. Looking at the handsome face in front of her, she quietly breathed a sigh of relief and said, "It was too dangerous just now. What if I had been hit?" Ming stood on the side of the road with her in his arms and whispered, "It's okay. I will protect you." What if I had been hit? Even if I didn't die, at least my hands and feet would have been broken. That would have been ugly. Yu Lily was a little angry and patted him. Just now, she didn't realize that she was on the side of the road. If Ming hadn't pulled her in time, she would have been hit by the car and lying on the side of the road. When he heard Yu Lily's words, Ming's lips curled up in a smile. In a low voice he said, "What are you afraid of? You won't look bad no matter what. If you break your hand, I'll feed you and help you bathe. If you break your leg, I'll carry you on my back and take care of you for the rest of your life." Hearing Ming's words, Yu Lily only felt excited, but she didn't know whether he was joking or serious. But soon she pouted and said, "I won't give you this chance." Ming pinched her face and said, "The light is green." Yu Lily turned her head and found that many people were looking at her. She was a little embarrassed and immediately pushed Ming away and walked across the road. Looking at her back, Ming felt a sense of satisfaction in his heart. He stepped forward and took her hand. Following her, he said, "What about me? If my hands and feet were broken, what would you do?" "That day won't come." Yu Lily didn't look back. She held his hand and walked forward. What if there is? There were many people coming and going. It was the first day of the new year, and it was very lively everywhere. Yu Lily's grip on Ming's hand tightened, and the distance between them grew closer and closer. O Ming walked to her side and put his arm around her shoulder. If I did, what would you do? Yu Lily thought for a moment and said with a smile, I'm with you because you are handsome. If you break your hands and feet, you won't be handsome anymore. At that time, I will leave you and not be with you. How dare you? O Ming knew that she was joking, but he still felt a little unhappy. He pinched her waist in the crowd and said, If you dare to sneak away, I will definitely kill you. Chapter 1107. Yu Lily was very familiar with the nearby road conditions. Up ahead was a famous local attraction in Kingstown. Couples called it Yu Lao Lake. There were many sculptures by the Yu Lao Lake, including the Earth God, Goddess of Mercy, and various Buddha statues. These sculptures stood around the Yu Lao Lake as if they were guarding something within it. Many couples would choose to come here to pray, throw coins into the water, and release lotus lanterns at night. When O Ming said elope, did he mean to come here to commit to his life? Thinking of this, Yu Lily's heart became sweeter and sweeter, and her footsteps became slower and slower. After running for less than a minute, Yu Lily turned around and saw that O Ming was blocked by the crowd, unable to catch up. She smiled proudly. He waved at Zhang Xian and many people turned to look at him. When O Ming saw her like this, a look of helplessness appeared in his bright peach blossom eyes. At the same time, there was also a strong sense of affection. It was as if he was looking at his most beloved person. It was so sweet that one couldn't help but be immersed in it. O Ming was relatively tall and he was very conspicuous in the crowd. When she saw O Ming's gaze, the softness in the deepest part of her heart was touched. After confirming that he had seen her, the wave became smaller and smaller. In the end, Yu Lily raised her hand and stood in place, waiting for O Ming to come. O Ming looked at her as if he was looking at a naughty child. He slowly pushed through the crowd and walked over. But suddenly his arm tightened. The other party had used a lot of strength and O Ming was shocked. He turned his head and saw that it was Qiao Ziqing's bodyguard, Guan Yun. Bodyguard Guan was very tall and he was dressed in black. He was holding O Ming's hand tightly. Young master, madam is waiting for you in the car. Hurry back, bodyguard Guan said. His voice was a little stiff, and he couldn't hear any emotion. O Ming struggled for a moment and said, I'm not going back. Tell my mother that I'll be back later. Young master, madam's illness has acted up. Bodyguard Guan's voice finally had some fluctuations and he sounded a little nervous. When O Ming heard that, his heart skipped a beat. He turned his head and asked, Didn't you bring medicine? I did, bodyguard Guan said. But before O Ming could heave a sigh of relief, he heard bodyguard Guan speak again. He said, But madam refuses to take the medicine now. She said that if you don't go back, she won't take the medicine and will die in front of you. As he spoke, his grip on O Ming's hand tightened. When O Ming heard that, he was so angry that he laughed. He roared, Mother ***, is she crazy? She's using this method to force me to go back? This was not the first time. The last time she threatened him to break up with Yu Lily, she had used the same method. It was despicable. However, he couldn't help but be moved by such a method. No matter how despicable Qiao Ziqing was, she was still his mother who had given birth to him and raised him for decades. When bodyguard Guan heard that, he could hear the nervousness in O Ming's voice. He continued, Madam asked me to ask you this. She's your mother. For a woman, you're willing to sacrifice your mother's life. Is it really comfortable for you to be together? If she's dead, then she was killed by you and that woman. ***ck. O Ming cursed. He subconsciously looked at Yu Lily who was in front of him. Yu Lily seemed to have sensed that something was wrong with him. She was trying her best to walk in his direction. O Ming's heart softened and he said, I'll let her know. Chapter 1108. O Ming was caught off guard and stumbled. When he looked up in Yu Lily's direction, he realized that she had been covered by the crowd. He couldn't see her anymore. Bodyguard Guan forcefully pulled him in the opposite direction. O Ming looked away from Yu Lily and yelled, I'll walk on my own. Where's my mom? In front. Hurry up. Bodyguard Guan had always been an honest man. From the looks of it, he couldn't be lying. ***ck. O Ming cursed under his breath. He turned around and ran in the direction bodyguard Guan had pointed out. After being squeezed by the crowd, Yu Lily couldn't see where O Ming was anymore. She turned left and right but she couldn't see him. She shouted, Oh! However, there were too many people and too much noise. Yu Lily's voice didn't travel far in the crowd before it was drowned out by the noise. Lily turned back to where O Ming had been. No matter how hard she looked, she couldn't find any trace of O Ming. With her heart empty, Lily stood where she was and looked left and right. However, all he could see was a sea of black heads, and where was that person? O Ming was led by bodyguard Guan and ran for a long time. Finally, after crossing 2 main roads and exiting the scenic area, they stopped. There were very few people there, and the highway was not far away. A familiar black Bentley was parked on the side of the road facing him. The chauffeur was in the driver's seat, but Qiao Ziqing was nowhere to be seen. O Ming panted and turned to look at bodyguard Guan. "Where's my mom?" "She's in the back seat. Lying down." Bodyguard Guan pulled him toward the car. O Ming felt that something was wrong, but he didn't think too much about it. He walked toward the car in front of him. He went up to open the back seat door. When he did, he saw Qiao Ziqing sitting inside. She looked noble and graceful. She turned her head and looked at him calmly. She didn't look like she was having a seizure. When O Ming saw that, he knew he had fallen into a trap. Annoyed, he was about to walk back when bodyguard Guan held him down and shoved him into the car. After the bodyguard closed the door, the driver immediately locked it. O Ming was flustered and exasperated. He slammed the car door and roared, "You lied to me." Facing her son's anger, Qiao Ziqing was indifferent. She said calmly, "Go home. It's the new year. What's the point of hanging out with a mistress?" "Shut up." O Ming was even more furious. He roared, "She is not a mistress. She is my girlfriend." Qiao Ziqing looked at O Ming and felt that he was hopelessly crazy. His eyes and expression were as if he was looking at a lunatic. "O Ming, you're crazy. You've been infatuated with that woman. You're crazy." "Mom, I know exactly what I'm doing. If you want me to go back with you, sure, but let me go first. I'll say goodbye to her and I'll go back with you immediately." "Impossible." Qiao Ziqing denied without hesitation. "Do you really think I'm stupid? Will you come back after you leave?" It was impossible to use the same move twice. Qiao Ziqing knew exactly what was going on. With a cold expression, she said to the driver, "Drive faster." The driver obeyed and sped up. O Ming closed his eyes. "She will be waiting for me there. If she can't find me, what should I do?" That. Chapter 1109. Look for you? Do you really think that woman cares about you that much? When she can't find you, she'll naturally go back. O Ming's eyes darkened and he shook his head. "No, she'll definitely think that we're lost and wait for me to find her. Lily wouldn't leave. Even if she didn't see him return, she would still wait for him. Look for him." Seeing O Ming like this, Qiao Ziqing's heart ached. After all, as a mother, no one wanted to see their son unhappy. But how could a woman like Lily be worthy of her son? Now, O Ming's status was extraordinary, and he had a certain say in all of Kingstown. But what if? "O Ming, you have everything now. If one day you fall from your current position, that woman will definitely not be by your side. That kind of woman is vain and fawns over the rich and powerful. If one day you are in trouble, not only will she not be by your side, she might even hit you when you are down. I've seen many women like that. You are bewitched now, but in the future, you will understand your mother's intentions. In this world, only your mother is truly good to you. Do you know that?" O Ming looked at Qiao Ziqing and said, "O Ming, you have everything you want now, but if one day you fall from your current position, that woman will definitely not be by your side." O Ming looked at Qiao Ziqing and said seriously, "Mom, this woman is not what you think she is. Lily is an orphan and has no parents, but after all these years, I know her too well. She's not the kind of person you think she is. She's better than Xin Manting 100 times, 1,000 times better." Seeing O Ming so serious, Qiao Ziqing was even more furious. She shouted, "Why can't you understand? What kind of drug did that woman use on you to make you so loyal to her? O Ming, don't make me angry, okay? I don't have much time left to live. Do you really want me to die?" Her words were so serious that O Ming fell silent and didn't make a sound. Gently taking Qiao Ziqing's hand away, O Ming closed his eyes, straightened his body and sat in his seat. Seeing this, Qiao Ziqing quietly breathed a sigh of relief. Bodyguard Guan was always paying attention to the movements behind him. If O Ming made any strange movements, he would immediately be able to stop him. However, after more than 10 minutes had passed and the car was on the highway, O Ming didn't move again. Both Qiao Ziqing and bodyguard Guan relaxed a little and calmed down a little. However, O Ming suddenly opened his eyes, stood up, and threw himself at the driver's seat. Old Qin had been with Qiao Ziqing for more than 10 years, but this was the first time he had encountered such a situation. he was shocked and shouted, "Young master, what are you doing?" The car was on the highway. Old Chen was frightened, but he was an experienced driver after all. He quickly drove the car to the side of the railing and stepped on the emergency brake. Luckily, there weren't many cars on the highway. The car behind the Bentley immediately braked, but it still kissed the rear of the Bentley. Bang! The car shook and Xiao Ziqing felt dizzy from the impact. However, at the same time, a cold wind blew from the left. Obviously, the car door had been opened. "Lil, oh, come back!" Xiao Ziqing yelled when she opened her eyes with difficulty. However, what responded to her was a loud breaking sound and a dull thud. Xiao Ziqing seemed to see a figure suddenly collapse. At the same time, Old Chen's driver cried out, "Young master!" Chapter 11:10. Yu Lily searched for a long time, but she didn't see O Ming. After going around in circles, she returned to the original place. It was a sunny day and the sun was shining brightly. There were fewer and fewer people outside. Yu Lily took off her coat and stood there so that O Ming could find her. After thinking about it, she picked up her phone to try her luck. She dialed O Ming's number, but his phone was turned off. Yu Lily stood there for more than an hour. But she didn't see O Ming. Could it be that he was secretly hiding? That shouldn't be the case. She looked at the time. It was already past 3 in the afternoon. Usually, at home, people should be eating together at this time, right? Or they had already finished eating, gathered together to play cards, chat, or go for a drive around. How nice. But where is O Ming? Could it be that he had already sneaked back home? That shouldn't be the case. He wouldn't suddenly disappear. Especially on the first day of the Lunar New Year, such a special day. Did he hide to give me a surprise? Thinking of that, Yu Lily's tense mood quietly relaxed. The security guard of the scenic spot watched Yu Lily stand there for a long time. Finally, he couldn't help but come forward and ask, "Miss, are you waiting for someone?" Yu Lily smiled and nodded her head. "Yes, I'm waiting for my boyfriend." "You're late for so long? I saw you standing here alone for almost 2 hours. Why aren't you here yet?" "No, he just came with me. There were so many people just now, so he must have run away. I'm waiting for him to come back and find me." When the security guard heard that, he clicked his tongue and said, "What a nice girl. Give him a call. How can you let a girl wait outside for him to feel the cold wind during the Lunar New Year?" "It's okay, big brother. You can go back. I think he'll find me in a while." Yu Lily smiled gratefully. "Sure. If your feet are tired from standing, you can come to our security booth and sit for a while. You look about the same age as my daughter. You're quite pitiful." Yu Lily chuckled and said, "It's okay. Go ahead." "All right." The security guard waved his hand and walked back. Yu Lily stood in the same place for nearly an hour, but she still didn't see him. Could it be that he thought that after coming here to look for her and failing to find her, he went back to wait at her doorstep? The more she thought about it, the more likely it seemed. After putting on his coat, he walked to the side of the security booth and said to the security guard, "Big brother, if a man about this tall, wearing a black trench coat and a dark suit inside comes looking for me, can you help me tell him that I went home to look for him?" "All right." The security guard nodded. "If I see him later, I'll send him home. Do you have his photo?" She quickly took out her cell phone and found O Ming's photo. She said, "This." When the security guard saw O Ming's face, his eyes lit up and he said, "This young man is quite handsome. He looks like a star." When she heard someone praise her man, Yu Lily chuckled and said, "I'll have to trouble you then. I'll head back first." "All right." This place was a little far from where she lived. If O Ming was really waiting at her doorstep, it would be bad. Yu Lily quickly went out and hailed a taxi. When she got out of the elevator, she was disappointed. Chapter 11:11. No, O Ming was not here. But where could he have gone? Opening the door, Yu Lily collapsed on the sofa, exhausted. No one expected such a thing to happen on the first day of the new year. O Ming was knocked down by a speeding Toyota. His head was bleeding profusely and even his arm was fractured. The situation was not optimistic. By the time the ambulance arrived, more than 10 minutes had passed. O Ming's consciousness was a little fuzzy. When he was carried on the stretcher, he heard Xiao Ziqing crying, apologizing, and repentance. However, in his mind he remembered the joke he had said to Yu Lily not long ago. "If I broke my arms and legs, what would you do?" Yu Lily was really tired that day. She collapsed on the sofa and fell asleep without knowing it. When she woke up, it was already dark outside. Looking at the time, It was already past 5 in the evening. At this time, Yu Lily's body was a little stiff. She quickly got up and opened the visitor log to check. Could it be that, after Ming rang the doorbell and found no one answered, he left? However, after checking all the records for the day, Yu Lily found nothing. Ming did not come. Yu Lily was very disappointed. She turned to the sofa and picked up her phone, only to find that it was turned off. Returning to the room, she charged the phone and turned it on. She put it aside and went to the bathroom. When she came out, she found that the phone screen was still on. Picking it up, she saw a lot of missed calls and messages. Seeing these things, Yu Lily was happy. It must be Ming. Damn it, why did he only think of calling and texting me now? She had waited at the entrance of Yuelao Lake for 3 hours. Don't expect me to forgive you so easily. Yu Lily unlocked the phone, only to find that the missed calls and messages were all from Su Qianxi. 7 missed calls and 2 text messages. Feeling disappointed, Yu Lily was not in a hurry to call back. Instead, she opened the messages. However, as soon as she saw the words, her head seemed to be hit by something. Caught off guard, her head buzzed and went blank. Qian, I heard that Ming had a car accident. Are you okay? Qian, you are not in the hospital. Where did you go? Ming is in the operating room. Come quickly. Rehabilitation hospital. Seeing the message, Yu Lily's hand suddenly trembled, and there was only one thought left in her mind. Ming had a car accident, Ming had a car accident. But why would there be a car accident? However, if he didn't get into a car accident, how could he disappear without a sound? Yu Lily didn't even think to put on her coat. Holding the phone, she rushed out of the door and pressed the elevator button desperately. When she looked down, she found that her hands were slightly trembling. He dialed Su Qianxi's number. The ringtone sounded as long as a century. Unknowingly, Yu Lily felt her eyes burning and her heart racing uncontrollably. Ding. When the elevator arrived, Yu Lily strode in. At the same time, Su Qianxi's phone was connected. Chapter 11-12. Su Qianxi could hear the panic in Yu Lily's voice and said, Lily, don't be afraid. Where are you now? How is he? Where is he? He's in the hospital. He just came out of the emergency room. His hand is broken and... Su Qianxi opened her mouth, but she couldn't bear to say it. She said, you should come and see for yourself. He was looking for you. He was looking for you. When Yu Lily heard that, she burst into tears and cried out, is he okay? He's fine at the moment, but what? Yu Lily panicked, but after confirming that he was fine, she let out a sigh of relief and said, tell him that I'm coming. I'll be there soon. Wait for me. Come quickly. I'm at the hospital with my husband, but he's been looking for you. All right. She hung up the phone. The elevator reached the first floor. Yu Lily wasn't wearing a coat. She was only wearing a thin knitted shirt. When the evening wind blew, she shivered. But she had no time to care. By the time she got a taxi to the rehabilitation hospital, more than 20 minutes had passed. After paying the fare, Yu Lily switched off her phone the moment she got out of the car. She ran into the hospital and asked for Ming's ward before heading straight for the 6th floor. The hospital elevator was busy, so Yu Lily ran up the stairs. Yu Lily was panting heavily. Before she could steady herself, she ran in the direction of Ming's ward. Outside the ward, there were quite a number of people. There were medical staff, Ming's family, Li Xiqing and Luo Zhan. Yu Lily looked at them and panted heavily. She calmed herself down and walked over slowly. Qiao Ziqing's eyes were red and swollen. She looked miserable from crying. She was standing shoulder to shoulder with a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man looked similar to Ming, so he was probably Ming's father. When Fenglin was also standing there with Ming's father. Yu Lily's appearance attracted a lot of attention. When Qiao Ziqing saw her, she was angry. She flung Ming's father's hand away and strode over to Yu Lily. Yu Lily looked at Qiao Ziqing and called out, Auntie Ming? However, before he could finish his sentence, his face was slapped hard. Qiao Ziqing's slap was very, very heavy. It was so heavy that Yu Lily felt as if she had been slapped directly in the heart, and the pain was burning. His face, which had turned red from the cold, was so numb that it felt like it was going to break under this slap. How dare you show up? It's all because of you that my son ended up like this. If it weren't for seeing you, Ming wouldn't have grabbed the steering wheel and jumped out of the car. Jump out of the car. Those 2 words were like a heavy hammer hitting Yu Lily in the heart. At this moment, the pain was hysterical. In order to see her, Ming jumped out of the car? Yu Lily could clearly feel that her cheeks were slightly swollen. Her face was painful and numb. Qiao Ziqing's words had completely erased the last bit of confidence he had in his heart. She didn't dare to look up at Qiao Ziqing. She lowered her head and asked, "Auntie, how is Ming?" Qiao Ziqing burst into tears. "It's all your fault, you evil spirit. You've really harmed my son." As she spoke, she had already collapsed on the man beside her and burst into tears. Chapter 11:13. What right do you have to see him? Qiao Ziqing roared hysterically. She pushed Yu Lily with both hands and shouted, "Don't you think you haven't heard him enough? What right do you have to see him? What right do you have to see him?" Qiao Ziqing's words, accompanied by her shove, were extremely hurtful. "Yes, what right do I have? What right do I have to see him? But at this time Ming should need me." Although Yu Lily didn't know what Ming looked like at the moment, and she didn't know where he was hurt or where he was uncomfortable, he was looking for her, wasn't he? Yu Lily took a step back and looked up at Qiao Ziqing. She said firmly, "I am his girlfriend." Bah! Qiao Ziqing was furious and roared, "Who do you think you are? You want to be my son's girlfriend? I've seen many women like you. Now Ming has just been in trouble and you're here to put on an act. After confirming that Ming is seriously injured, you'll leave, right?" Her words were extremely hurtful. In one sentence, she had already determined that Yu Lily was a vain woman. Yu Lily was about to speak when she saw Qiao Ziqing's pleading expression. She said, "I beg you, don't pester my son anymore, okay? Just take it as you've done good deeds. He can't take any more blows now." How much Ming cared about women could be seen from the moment he jumped out of the car. But if such a woman knew Ming's current situation, she would definitely turn around and leave without hesitation. Such a situation, such a blow, was definitely not something Ming could take. What? Ming couldn't take it anymore? Absolutely not. You know what? You can go. I'll pretend you were never here. Auntie, you may have some misunderstandings about Lily, but Lily is not the kind of person you think she is. Su Qianxi, who had been silent all this time, walked to Yu Lily's side and took off her coat as she spoke to Qiao Ziqing. Yu Lily had left the house in a hurry and hadn't even put on a coat. In such weather she looked thin and weak. In the cold winter she was shivering slightly. Su Qianxi covered Yu Lily with her light blue coat and continued, "Lily and I are also good friends. She has been with Ming for many years." "Enough." Qiao Ziqing interrupted Su Qianxi and shouted, "I will not let her in. Don't even think about it." Even if he didn't let her see, it would still be good for her to know about his situation. Yu Lily moved her lips, but no words came out. When Feng Lin, who was standing a short distance behind Qiao Ziqing, glanced at Yu Lily. In a hoarse voice he said, "Xiao Qiao, I just arrived. How's Xiao doing?" When Yu Lily heard that, she looked up at Wen Feng Lin. On the other hand, Wen Feng Lin acted as if he had asked the question in passing. He didn't even look at her. Facing her longtime friend, Qiao Ziqing's attitude was undoubtedly much better. She said, when he woke up, his emotions weren't too stable. The doctor gave him a sedative and he fell asleep. "Come in, let's watch over him together." When Wen Feng Lin heard that, he nodded his head. "Go on in. I'm going to smoke a cigarette." Qiao Ziqing and her husband looked at each other and walked into the ward together. Chapter 11:14. Yu Lily's voice was filled with heartfelt gratitude. When Feng Lin's small eyes beneath his black-rimmed glasses gazed at her, he said earnestly, "Young people should be more rational. Ming's condition isn't too good. Xiao Qiao is a little paranoid. It's hard for others to change her mind once she set her mind on something. I don't know what happened between you two, but Xiao Qiao is a mother. She's only doing this for the good of her son. I hope you can understand. This is just a mother's desire to protect her son. She's not targeting you." Yu Lily was amused to hear that he was clearly trying to clear Qiao Ziqing's name. She looked up at Wen Feng Lin's single-lidded eyes and nodded her head. "Thank you." A smile appeared on Wen Feng Lin's face. Two deep dimples appeared on both sides of his cheeks. They made him look much gentler. "You're welcome. Go back and rest. They'll be leaving soon. I'll call you over when they're gone." "I'll call you over when they're gone." Looking at the man in front of her, who was about the same age as Ming's mother, Yu Lily felt a lump in her throat. Her eyes burned. She wanted to laugh, but the muscles on her face refused to listen. If Yu Lily had only felt touched earlier, she was now filled with an indescribable sense of gratitude. Yu Lily's lips turned down uncontrollably. She lowered her head and covered her face. She choked up and said, "Thank you. Thank you." Qiao Ziqing would definitely be guarded against Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi, but she wouldn't be guarded against Wen Fenglin. Under the circumstances, as Qiao Ziqing's friend, Wen Fenglin was undoubtedly the most qualified person to say such a thing. As long as he was willing to help her, she should be able to see Ming. But why would Wen Fenglin help her? The smile on Wen Fenglin's face deepened. He looked at Yu Lily with loving eyes. "You're a good child. Give me your phone." Yu Lily quickly reached for her phone. It was only then that she realized it was out of battery. Looking at the dead phone, she said sheepishly, "It's out of battery, take this for now." When Fenglin took out a small black cell phone from his pocket and handed it to Yu Lily. It looked brand new. "I'll contact you later." She looked up at Wen Fenglin in shock. Wen Fenglin put his finger to his lips and said, "Shh, it's time to smoke." As he spoke, he shoved the phone into Yu Lily's hand and turned to enter Ming's ward. Both Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi took in Wen Fenglin's words and actions. Su Qianxi looked at Yu Lily and said softly, "Let's find a place to hide first. We'll come back when this uncle contacts us." Yu Lily pulled herself together and nodded. He put his coat on Su Qianxi, followed the two women and found a lounge to sit down. About 10 minutes later their phones kept ringing. They were all from their parents and children, asking them to come home. Today was the first day of the Lunar New Year. The Li family must be happy and harmonious. But they were accompanying her in the hospital. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.